In a quiet retirement community, Steve Moore's life crumbles when he uncovers his wife Sarah's shocking affairs. After 38 years of marriage, Steve secretly installs cameras revealing Sarah's betrayal with multiple men, including a twisted love triangle. A heated confrontation erupts, but Sarah shows no remorse, craving excitement over loyalty. Pushed to his limits, Steve must decide. Fight for what's left or leave it all behind. The truth is out, and nothing will ever be the same. I've lived for almost 60 years, and sometimes it feels like I've experienced every day of it. I can still do many things I could do in my 20s or 30s, like running a marathon, but I go much slower now. Do I have regrets in my life? Sure, who doesn't? But after thinking it over, I've figured out what matters. If you focus on what-ifs instead of I can, you might end up in a box and just give up on life. I'm not ready for that yet. So each morning I get up, go to work, and give my best effort because that's what I'm paid to do. I think I have just over 9 years left until I retire, and then I can do almost anything I want. Will I make any changes in my life? Absolutely. The first thing I'll do is leave that retirement village my wife encouraged me to move to a few months ago. You see, she retired early and is really enjoying her time there, while I dislike the place more and more every day. Will I change my mind? Who knows? Maybe I'll do it even sooner, whether my wife, Sarah, is with me or not. Only time will tell. We had a great house, which was 95 years old and listed as a historic home in our town. It did have a few frustrating rules, but owning a historic house is a good thing overall. The small bronze plaque on the front shows who the first owners were and when it was built. We are only the second owners. Over the last 20 years, we've updated the wiring and plumbing to make it modern, but kept the outside looking original. 2 years before we sold it, we repainted the house in the 3 original Victorian colors. It looked wonderful, especially with the white hedge in front. The only real problem we had was needing a new roof. We talked with city officials for a long time about which shingles would work, since the original ones were no longer made. In the end, they approved our choice, and I decided that would be the last thing I would do to the house. With just 5 years left on the mortgage, I thought the house was ready to be sold. I had no idea the plans to sell it were already set. If I had known, I would still be living there. And where would my wife be? Who knows? She also convinced me to sell our jewelry to move here, which still puzzles me. Don't get me wrong, this new place is quite nice, but it's only half the size of our old house. With the kids gone, we didn't need all 4 bedrooms anymore. However, the quality here is much less than I'm used to. It looks good, but it's not as strong. In our old house, we had plastered walls and ceilings, and now it's just drywall with ugly textured ceilings that remind me of the 70s. The new kitchen appliances are definitely nicer than what we used to have. But do we really need a fancy oven and stove when it's just the 2 of us cooking here most of the time? A microwave and a regular stove are plenty. A dishwasher is nice, but the refrigerator? It feels like something from a sci-fi movie. I don't need fancy water options or a million ice cube shapes. And why would I ever leave a message for my wife on the recorder by the door? Just give me my old refrigerator. It had an ice maker and kept my drinks cool. That would make me happy. But it looks like I have to stick with this for now. At least it won't be forever. When Sarah's 2 best friends sold their houses and moved close to us last year, she was surprised they were still only 20 minutes away by car. But the way she talked, you'd think they had moved to the other side of the country. Sarah worked for the school system, so after she earned enough points from her years of service, she decided to take early retirement. The only rule was that she should not spend money like she did when she was working, because her retirement income was only a bit more than half of what she used to make. This lasted for 9 whole months. Then she started saying she needed new sports clothes and casual outfits. I always thought she looked good in her shorts and t-shirts. Honestly, I didn't know much about fashion, but soon learned the difference. While shorts and t-shirts could be found at Walmart, nice casual outfits came from malls or fancy little shops with high prices. When she began spending time with her friends in their new homes, I was glad for her. But then, they got her into dancing, tennis, and golf, and I worried a little. When I came home to an empty house and found a note saying my dinner was in the microwave, I got upset. "Sarah, do I really not matter enough for you to come home for dinner anymore?" I asked. "Steve, I knew I'd be late, so I made sure your dinner was ready before I left for Connie's," she replied. "What was so important at Connie's that you had to be there before 8:34? I looked at my watch. It was 8:34. "Our dance group is performing in the town square at 6 p.m., and I just had to be there. You don't want me to let them down, do you, Steve?" she asked. "I don't care about your dance group or your golf friends until it starts affecting my life," I said. "What you do during the day is fine, but when I come home after work, I don't like finding a note about my dinner." "Steve, that's a bit rude." "Rude or not, I don't like it. If it were the first time, I wouldn't mind as much, but it's happening more often. Why don't you just move in with Connie or Judy for a while?" I said, trying to keep my anger in check, but it was hard. "I'm sorry, and I promise it won't happen again," she said. "Why didn't you eat and join us?" I asked. "The last time I tried to do that, your group moved places twice, and you didn't return my calls. I'm not going to search everywhere for my unreliable wife. Since I'm already home, why don't I pour us both a glass of wine while you take a shower upstairs?" That was her way of saying tonight would be a special night. And it truly was a nice evening. Life felt good, and after all these years, it was easy being married to Sarah. We often finished each other's sentences, and I thought I really understood her thoughts. I learned later that I was mistaken when we started spending time with her friends from Temple Gardens. I just went along with whatever. We had dinners, barbecues, shopping trips, and weekend getaways, which brought us closer together. Then, when two more couples joined us and we started going to events at Town Square, I didn't know what to think. I enjoyed car shows, art fairs, and cooking events. I wasn't a dancer, so when the music played and people got up to dance, I did my usual 3 slow dances and watched as Sarah joined in with one group or another. Did I ever feel jealous? Not really. I knew that if I didn't let her have fun, she would keep bugging me until I did. So I went along with it. Well, that worked for a while, but everything changed one Saturday night when they all wanted to eat at a restaurant in one of the town squares. Someone made a reservation for 10 people, but when we arrived, the maitre d' wouldn't let us in. It turned out the restaurant only allowed people who lived in Temple Gardens. Our group said we were their guests, but he stubbornly refused us. "Come on, Sarah, let's leave. I wouldn't give them a single dollar even if they begged us," I said. The other couples apologized, but I assured them it wasn't their fault and there was no reason to worry about us. We would just find something else to eat. "Steve, if we lived here, we wouldn't have this problem," she said as she sensed I was upset. "That will never happen. I'd always want ribs, but that's not in the cards. Our house will never sell during a recession, and if it does, we'll lose money. Plus, there are so many rules to follow that I don't know if I could handle them." The rest of dinner was quiet, and for about a month, nothing changed. We kept seeing the same group, with a few people coming and going. Then, one Friday evening, it happened. "Steve, what would you say if I told you we had a buyer for our house?" Sarah asked excitedly when I walked in the door. "Whose house? What buyer?" I was puzzled. "You know, we always get flyers saying this or that house has sold nearby. If you're interested, call this realtor or that one." I called one from the flyer that came a couple of weeks ago. He looked at our house and said many people want homes like ours and we could get a great price, even in this tough market. "Sarah, it didn't even cross your mind to ask me if I wanted to sell the house?" I replied. "Steve, I just checked how much our house is worth and I started dreaming about it. Dreaming is like thinking about what could be. But you went even further than that." "Okay, I did, but the realtor called this morning. He said there are 2 couples who want to see the house this weekend. Isn't that exciting? Sometimes it's hard to find the right words. Are you crazy? Why would I want to sell? I really love this house." This started a long talk about why I should consider it. I have to give her credit. She made some good points. She had done her research. The money from selling the house would cover everything we want to replace, and we could save the rest. Our house is too big for just the 2 of us. The bills on it are around $400 a month because the windows are old and there's no insulation. The yard takes a lot of work, and our neighborhood is getting older. Sarah, this is a historic area. It's meant to be old. Steve, when you retire, will you want to care for this house? In a couple of years, we'll have to paint it. Wouldn't it be nice to have something new that doesn't need so much worry? I know you like it here, but don't you at least want to think about what we could buy? We met with the realtor on Saturday morning. He showed us similar houses and gave a price idea. He said he already had 2 offers and that we could sell in 2 months. When I asked about the sales commission, I was shocked to learn it would be either 2% less or nothing. We finally agreed on 1 1/4. Why don't we check out what Temple Gardens has? I'm sure our friends can give us a tour. Yeah, I really believe they will, I thought. I headed toward the Temple Gardens office. I noticed a big map on the wall. It was huge, like a city covering 3 counties. He said they had just finished their 9th expansion and had space for 3 more. This is the largest housing project outside of Sun City, Arizona. We have 16 golf courses, 28 tennis courts, 6 man-made lakes, and 2 town squares with shops and restaurants. Also, there are medical facilities nearby, within 5 minutes in 3 business areas. Next year, they're building a hospital here. Once you move in, you won't need to go anywhere else for what you want. It's almost like we don't need anything else. The only thing I didn't like was that there's only 1 real estate office allowed to sell all the properties. The list of rules seemed endless. I tried not to be negative, but it looked like the developers wanted to control everything in this community. He must have been eager to make a sale when he asked what we were looking for. Sarah pulled out a typed list. She had really done her research. Then we checked out the models, and while they looked nice, nothing stood out. When he asked what budget we had in mind, I said no more than $175,000, which would save us nearly $80,000. He started talking about what was available within that price range and the general area in the complex. Steve, this apartment is just 3 blocks from Judy's house. How convenient, I thought to myself with a hint of sarcasm. Let's check this one out, she suggested, smiling. At least this house felt warmer than the other models. It had some nice touches, including a hot tub on the small patio, but still seemed a bit small to me, and everyone else thought I was being too picky. When I asked to see the attic, the realtor corrected me. It's not really an attic. It's more of the space between the ceiling beams. I just wanted to check the insulation. I found out there was only 6 inches of loose fiber insulation. That made me worry as I spotted 2 more issues, concern spreading across my face. This is an older house. It's bound to have some problems, he said, writing down notes. Does this house come with any kind of warranty? Are the owners willing to make repairs? Mr. More. I can find out for you after I check with them. Most owners usually cooperate with potential buyers. I told him I wanted to see at least 3 more places. He showed us 3 more houses, all in similar shape, and one that was $30,000 more. I liked this one better. I guess the saying, you get what you pay for, is true, at least in this situation. After about 4.5 hours of looking around, he asked us to dinner. We talked about price and location, and when I mentioned I would pay in cash, his eyes brightened. Maybe we can negotiate on one of the older models we have in the town square area. They usually come with all the necessary upgrades and even the furniture, he said, his excitement clear. Well, my wife and I are open to discussions for the right price. The house was just 3 blocks from the first town square built. It was a model home, but had been rented out many times over the past 5 years. The house came with a 2-year warranty on appliances, along with the standard workmanship warranty. It had 2 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, and a small den for watching TV. The kitchen opened into the large family room, which made it feel bigger. Along with the 2-car garage, it had everything we wanted and needed, except for a pool. You could put in a small pool, I was told, but it needs to be screened in according to the building code. That was just the first of many moments that would annoy me later. But for now, everything appeared positive. Over the next week, Sarah, Judy, Connie, and their husbands made an effort to tell me what a great place it was. The realtor kept asking if I needed more information and mentioned he had 2 other couples looking at the same places. After thinking about it, I decided that since Sarah would be spending most of her time here, I wanted to be close to home after work. 2 months later, we sold our old house and moved into the new one. I arranged to repaint the kitchen and family room a soft coral color. We also held a garage sale to get rid of our old furniture. But after we signed the documents, I learned that yard sales were not allowed in our new neighborhood, even though my drive to work only took about 20 minutes. Living in the new place was even better than I had hoped. Sarah was really happy, and I enjoyed her cooking almost every night. There was one time when I even had to say I wasn't feeling well. Then we faced our first big issue. Sarah wanted a golf cart. Everyone in the neighborhood had one. The streets were filled with golf cart lanes, and in the evenings there were way more golf carts than cars. We owned 2 cars, but one of the rules stated that we couldn't leave either one outside in the driveway. So if we got a golf cart, I had to figure something out for one of the cars. "Steve, why not sell your Mustang? You barely drive it, and the golf cart would be better for daily use," Sarah suggested. "There's no way I'm selling my car. It's a classic. It was the first Cobra Mustang ever made. I'll find somewhere to keep it," I replied. Storage cost me almost $100 a month, but I thought it was worth it. Often, after dinner, Sarah wanted to walk to the town square to listen to music or shop. At first it was enjoyable, but soon it felt like just a way to finish dinner before bed. While Sarah danced every night and made new friends, I only joined for a few slow dances before watching her have fun. One night, I noticed that the town square events served alcohol. Since everyone drove golf carts instead of cars, many people felt they could drink as much as they wanted. I could see how that might lead to some problems considering how much they were drinking. While Sarah danced, I had a drink in my hand. That's how I met Esther. I was enjoying a beer and watching my wife dance when an elderly woman in a wheelchair next to me dropped her drink. "Could you pick that up for me?" she asked. "Of course," I replied, picking it up and wiping it off. "Oh, don't worry. The alcohol will kill any germs," she said with a smile. She took a big sip and added, "If it doesn't, I'm already 87, and I don't expect to live forever. Since most of it is spilled, why don't I get you a fresh one?" I stood up and said, "Just make sure it's not light beer. I really don't want to drink something that tastes watered down." I chuckled and walked over to the bar. "Here you go, a cold one," I said as I sat back down. I took the empty bottle from her and gave her a fresh bottle. "No need for any glasses," she replied, holding our bottles together. After taking a small sip, she sighed happily. "That's just what I needed. My name is Esther Thurman. What's yours?" "Steve Moore," I replied. "My wife Sarah and I moved here a couple of months ago." "And where's your wife today?" she asked. "She's dancing over there. 4th from the left in the yellow sundress," I answered, pointing to a group of people. "You have a nice wife. How long have you been married?" 38 years this September," I said proudly. "And why don't you dance with her?" she inquired. "I'm not much of a dancer, only for the slow songs. My husband, Carl, God rest his soul, wasn't a dancer either, but he always tried." I chuckled as she continued. "I think he broke his toes more than once. Luckily, his hip started bothering him, or I would have been hurting for a lot longer." She took another long sip of her beer. "You better be careful with that. You won't make it home," I warned. "I've planned for that. See that black woman over there?" She pointed at a group of women chatting. "That's my nurse. She brings me here every night. She sits me next to the music and goes to visit with friends. Sometimes she checks on me until the music stops. After that, she takes me home and gets me to bed. If I drink too much, she just hoses me off and helps me get ready for bed." "It may not be the best life, but at least you're still standing. Here's to being upright," I said, smiling and tapping our bottles together. "Are you fooling around?" she asked suddenly, catching me off guard. I spat out some beer and coughed, trying to recover. "Please don't die in front of me," Esther exclaimed as she watched me regain my breath. I wiped my nose with my handkerchief and tried to steady myself. "What kind of question is that? And no, I'm not interested in that kind of thing with you, Esther." She looked thoughtful. "A lot of people here are from a time when they were loyal to their partners, raised families, and worked their whole lives. By the time they retire, they can get bored with each other. Now they want to enjoy life a little." "Wow, Esther, that's quite a statement," I replied quietly, feeling surprised. "There may be gray hair on my head, but I still have some spirit," she exclaimed as she finished her beer and signaled for her nurse to bring another. "How many beers do you drink in a night?" I asked. "I usually stop at 3, but since you're treating me, I'll have 4 tonight. My record is 6, but that was last New Year's Eve, and I passed out around 10:15. That woman never woke me up. I missed the fireworks," she chuckled. "It happens sometimes." After 5 minutes, the music stopped, and Sarah came over to where I was sitting. "Esther, this is my wife, Sarah. Sarah, this is my new friend, Esther," my wife said as she reached out her hand to Esther. "Nice to meet you, Esther. You look great. Are you really only 56? You look younger than 45. I rolled my eyes while my wife blushed a bit. Well, Esther, it's time for us to head out. I hope to see you again, I said, giving my wife's hand a little squeeze. I'm here every night, so unless something drastic happens, I'll see you again. My wife then asked softly, "Where did you meet her?" I replied, "She was sitting there when I came over." I added, "I hope when I'm 87 I'll have her energy." That's how my friendship with Esther began. She was 87 years old. She had thinning silver hair styled on top of her head. Though she was only about 5 feet tall, she probably weighed around 150 pounds. She had moved to Temple Gardens with her husband after selling his business in New Jersey. They lived on the first floor and had access to all the amenities that others had to wait for, she explained. At first, they lived in a small 2-story cabin, but later they moved into a, as she called it, real house. She witnessed the community grow from 200 homes to over 20,000. She knew more about the neighborhood than the local newspaper, which I figured out pretty quickly. Her main goal in life was to enjoy each day to its fullest and live to be 90. Anything after that was just a bonus for her. I saw her almost every evening when I went to the town square. Each time I tried to buy her a beer. We chatted about life, dreams, and shared a lot of gossip about the community. I always wondered how she knew so much. Sometimes, even when I thought she was saying silly things, I later found out she was right more often than not. "Is this seat taken?" I asked while holding 2 mugs of beer as I walked over to Esther in her wheelchair. "Don't give me that, just sit down. Do I look like someone who needs to be treated like a lady?" I smiled at her. She grinned back, took one of the beers and asked, "Is your wife with you tonight?" "Yes, she's over there with that group," I said, pointing to Sarah and some friends. "You might want to keep an eye on your wife when she's with them. I'm not saying anything bad is happening, but some of the guys there have a reputation." "Those guys must be in their 70s, I said. "I think I could handle them all at once." "Okay, wise guy, just don't come to me if something happens," Esther said with a laugh. "Trust me, nothing will happen." I looked at her, and I could see she was ready to share a story. "What do you want to tell me?" I asked. Her eyes lit up, and a big grin spread across her face. "You better go get a refill because this one's worth 2 beers. I headed to the bar and got a Corona for me and a Bud for her. "Okay, what do you know about this band?" She looked around and leaned in closer. "Everyone in this group does it." I stared at her. "You can't be serious, can you? Some of these guys look too old to be interested." I nodded. "Steve, appearances can be misleading. The streets used to empty by 9 o'clock and everyone went home to sleep. Now it seems like everyone goes home to sleep, usually with someone else's partner." I watched as the group started dancing. "How do you know that? See that tall, thin guy with black hair? He wears makeup every few weeks. He used to be a banker up north and lost his wife after moving here. He has a nice retirement plan, a good car, and he treats the ladies to nice dinners and drinks." I looked at him for a moment. "It's not a big deal. He still has his hair, but he's definitely not a ladies' man." "Steve, in this community there are 2 or 3 single women for every man. These widows are eager to win this guy over. He's good-looking, has money, and is still charming. What more could a woman want?" "You got that right." I started to say she was mistaken, but she cut me off. "See that bald guy with the earring? He works out for 4 hours a day. He's in fantastic shape, and many women here, married or not, would jump at the chance with him, and I hear he has quite a reputation." She laughed and finished her first beer, saying, "He's married, but I've heard his wife is open to different relationships, if you know what I mean." This was getting overwhelming. "I need to stop you right there. The beer is making you talk too much, Steve. I know probably half the people here and where they live. I may be older and my eyesight isn't great, but my hearing is good, and I hear a lot when people think no one is listening. I just can't picture this place being wild for older folks." She chuckled. "Steve, we might be older, but we're not out of the game yet. Most of these folks just have time on their hands and want something new to enjoy. It's not like anyone is going to face more serious issues." I sat back and started observing the different groups of people. There were some in their 50s, but most were older, not counting the tourists. "No way," I thought to myself. But Esther has always been spot on about everything. "Okay, let's say I believe you. Do you think they would try anything with my wife while I'm sitting here?" "Yes." "You're still busy with work, aren't you?" "A little tennis in the morning, a trip to the pool to cool down, and maybe a cold drink or 2. And they would notice her right away. She's new to the scene. Most of the women here know their way around, but every new couple that moves in is a chance to connect. What else do the men here think about? Did I really believe her? Not really. But I decided to keep my eyes open, just like before. If they wanted to move in with my wife, I would stop it right away. Why can't we just stay in our own house? We still spent time with her friends and other couples we knew. After about 4 months, I noticed that Judy and Connie started acting a little odd around me. They were friends of Sarah, my wife, but they never looked me in the eye unless they had to. Honey, did I do something to make Judy and Connie upset? They seem to avoid me when we're all together. Did you say something to their husbands? We mostly talk about things like sports and news. I don't even mention our wives. You're probably imagining things. Just don't worry about it. Maybe I'll talk to them, Sarah replied. 2 weeks later, we met in the town square. I danced a few songs with Sarah before letting her join the group. I grabbed 2 beers and went to find Esther. Why are you keeping me away? Did you find someone else to dance with? She asked, smiling as she reached for her drink. I sat down beside her and said, Esther, you know I can't replace you. If I were a bit younger, I'd show you how charming I can be. I see you didn't listen to my warning, she said, pointing at our friends. Esther, this isn't a dance band. These are our old friends from where we used to live. I don't care who they are. They've been switching partners for a while now, she insisted. I think you're wrong about that. Want to make a little bet? I don't want your money. With the way you drink, you'll need every penny you have, I joked. Keep laughing. All I'm saying is your friends are the same group, she replied. Okay, how about we find out who's right? Shouldn't we make a bet first? How about 1 beer a night? You buy me a beer every time you see me here. I still do that, she said. I know, but I'm letting you. That way you'll owe me something and I won't feel bad about it. Do you feel bad about taking beers from me? Not at all. I just said that to tease you for trying to outsmart an old lady. She laughed, taking a sip from her drink. All right, I'll agree to your terms, but we still need a way to prove who's right. Have I been wrong before? Why don't we just say I'm right and you can get us more beers? I suggested. What if I am right? I've known them longer, and I've been friends with them for a while. We've even gone to their parties, and no one has ever come to talk to me. What about your wife? She knows them well. Why would they come to you when they can talk to her? Maybe they don't want to let you in on what they're up to. Have you thought about that? I began to recall how and why we came to live in this place. I just can't picture my wife acting like this. Who decided we should move here? And didn't you mention that those couples moved here first and encouraged my wife to follow them? I really didn't like where this conversation was heading, Esther. Are you saying my wife was dishonest to persuade me to move here? Steve, I'm not saying that. All I mean is that she wanted to stay close to her good friend. Maybe she didn't realize they had found a different way of living, but now she must know. Esther, we have a great life, and she doesn't need to stray from our marriage for happiness. Steve, it's not about happiness or anything like that. It's about the excitement of doing something you shouldn't and not being caught. Many wives here have caught their husbands doing strange things. Most forgive them because what options do they have? Usually the husbands are the ones making the money, and even if they share equally, they can't live like they do now. All their friends are nearby. They've built a new life here. Why would they risk losing it all for a little fun, so they ignore it or even go along with it? Very few actually split up. Sadly, the only separations I've noticed are when a wife strays from her husband. Men are much less forgiving. And why not? They end things with unfaithful partners and then pursue single women here. But Esther, they might be part of the scene, but that doesn't apply to my wife. I've known her for most of my life, and she would never do that to me. Not now, not ever. I hope you're right, she said, finishing her drink. You're too good a guy to get hurt, but I've seen it happen a lot. I need a beer. Want one? Do you really have to ask? She said, handing me her empty glass. I looked back at the group who were laughing and dancing, having a good time. She must be mistaken. I grabbed 2 beers, paid the bartender a few dollars, and returned to where Esther was sitting. I noticed she was watching my wife's group chatting with some women on the other side. It looked like all the older women were observing, listening closely. It seemed I would need to do the same. The music is almost over. I hope I haven't bothered you too much, she said as she took a bite of her food. It's a bet I don't want to win, and I hope I'm wrong. but I'm usually not wrong. I'd bet anything that she'll ask you to go back to one of their houses tonight. They've been whispering for the last few minutes, and the way they've been glancing at their watches suggests they're planning something for later. Maybe she'll talk to you about it tonight to see how you react. From how I'm feeling right now, I don't think that would be a good idea, Steve. There's no need to panic because, like I said, I could be wrong. And for heaven's sake, don't lose your cool. Don't do anything rash, and whatever you do, don't end up in trouble. I enjoy having you here. Plus, I think I have something planned for you. Are you ready, honey? Sarah asked as she approached us. How's it going today, Esther? Keeping my husband out of trouble? I smiled and replied, Honey, I think he's keeping me in check. Just then, Sarah said, The band is moving the party to Connie and Mike's house. They asked if we wanted to join them. What do you think? It could be fun. Do you want to go? I turned to Esther. Steve, let's go. It's still early and you don't have to work tomorrow. Sure, honey. If that's what you want, then let's go. I agreed. Esther, I hope to see you tomorrow, I said as I prepared to leave. Steve, remember what I told you? She called out as I walked away. We headed back home to grab the golf cart since their house was about a mile away. Sarah chatted away while I mostly listened and drove. Connie and Mike's house was smaller than ours, but they had turned their patio into a nice space with a hot tub. Their neighbors, Judy and Bill, lived just 2 blocks away and had a small pool, but their house looked a lot like Connie's. When we arrived at the party, we saw 5 other couples there, each with a drink. They were all talking and having a good time. Maybe Esther was mistaken about my wife being elsewhere. Mike came over and handed me a beer. He started sharing his thoughts on how some new rules were a bit too much and how a group was trying to fight back. I agreed that some measures were needed to keep property values up, but I felt the developers were going too far with certain rules. I completely agree, he said, lighting a cigarette. The gathering felt pretty normal until the music kicked in and people started to dance. I was sipping my beer, thinking that nobody dances with their spouse. I looked around for Sarah and saw her dancing with another husband, someone named Carl. It seemed innocent, but I couldn't help but wonder how long it would last. Bill came over and offered me another beer. You good, Steve? He asked. My attention was still on Sarah and Carl. When Bill remarked on how nice my wife looked tonight, I decided it was time to put a stop to any misconceptions. Well, Bill, Sarah and I are heading out, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I need to take my girlfriend home before she has too much fun, I added, noticing Carl getting a bit too close for comfort. Maybe next time we'll have the party at our place, I said, handing Bill my nearly full beer. I then walked over to Sarah. Come on, Sarah, we're leaving, I said softly, taking her hand and guiding her to the exit. But Steve, we just got here and I'm having so much fun. Well, you have a choice. You can stay with your friends, or you can come home with me right now. The choice is yours. She looked at me for about 15 seconds, then nodded. I'm going home with you. Good choice, I replied, leading her to the front door. I'm sorry we can't stay longer, but Sarah is tired and I need to take her home. Maybe next time we can stay longer. When Connie saw the look on my face, she understood it was best not to argue. She touched my arm and said, No problem, Steve. Just drive carefully. There are a lot of drunks around at this time. I smiled as we left. Why do you want to leave so suddenly? I was enjoying myself, she said. Let me make it clear. I didn't like how you danced with Carl. He had his arms all around you, and it seemed like you had too much to drink to stop him. I didn't want to cause a scene, she replied. I could have punched him or something, but it felt safer to just leave. He wasn't doing anything too bad, though, I said. And if I acted that way with his wife, you would get really upset, right? I watched her face for a moment. I guess you're right. Maybe I did have a bit too much to drink, she admitted. But it's still pretty early. When we get home, I might dance with you and see if we can have a nice evening together. I squeezed her hand. Or maybe we'll find a quiet spot in the town square. After we got home, things didn't go as I hoped. It felt like Sarah was the only one putting in the effort. I think this was the first time she noticed I wasn't planning to join her friends. Now, I needed to figure out if something happened while she was out. I hoped nothing had, but the way she was acting made me unsure. Breakfast on Sunday morning was a bit awkward. I told her I wasn't okay with what happened the day before, and that if things kept going this way, we might need to find new friends. Steve, it was probably just the alcohol. I can only imagine how Carl's wife felt when they got home. Nice comeback, I thought, feeling a bit annoyed. I didn't know you were going out today. Don't you remember? I mentioned it last week. There's a big sale at Kohl's and all the wives are going. Well, I was hoping to spend some time with you today. We already had time together last night, remember? But maybe I'll find something special to use tonight. I thought about going with her, but decided to stay back. What will I say if she catches me? I need a plan because I can't afford to hire someone to follow my wife while I'm at work. The internet is great for finding things if you know where to look. A GPS tracker was $100. I added 2 phone taps and a base station for $75, plus a system with 2 cameras and a voice recorder for another $155. So, while it wasn't the best system with top-quality pictures and sound for under $350, it would help me find out if my wife was doing something she shouldn't. Just before 5 o'clock, my wife came home with packages. I had already cooked dinner, steaks on the grill, potatoes in the oven, and salad in the fridge. I told her to set the table. She was excited about the great deals she found and said I'd see one of her purchases tonight. Dinner was tasty, and she suggested we finish eating in the town square. There was music and lots of people. I danced with her 4 times, even a couple of fast songs before saying we had to go. I grabbed 2 beers and went to find Esther. "I thought you were going to set me up tonight," she said, grabbing one of the beers from me. "What about your wife?" "Do you think she is being unfaithful?" I asked. I hadn't heard her called that in 20 years, and I smiled. I guess I'm not keeping up with the latest terms, but cheating means the same thing no matter what you call it. "Maybe if she could convince you, it wouldn't be cheating," she added. "I'm still unsure about her, but by next week, I'll know for sure. By Tuesday, I'll have all the monitoring gadgets set up and I'll find out what's really happening." "And what if it's bad news?" Esther asked. "I haven't thought that far ahead. I'm taking it one step at a time. We've been together for over 35 years and I can't picture life without her." "Well, you can always try swinging," she joked, and I looked at her in surprise. "Or if not, take me with you. I haven't had fun in forever, and I could probably show them a thing or two." She laughed, and I joined in until I looked up and saw my wife dancing with a guy. I hoped I could wait to find out what was really going on. On the walk back home, my wife held my hand. It felt like we were newlyweds again. The alarm clock rang and I didn't want to get up. I thought about calling in sick to spend the day in bed with my wife, but I forced myself up. I'm not young anymore, and after a couple of rounds I'd be sore, and she'd try to get me to go shopping for her sake. I arrived at work and sat at my desk on Monday. I couldn't stop worrying that my wife would do what Esther was suggesting, even if she had been acting strangely lately. That didn't mean she was part of the group, for goodness sake, especially not just because her old friends were doing it. My uneasy feeling grew stronger each day, but I hoped it would all be over soon, one way or another. On Tuesday, I heard some talk that made me anxious. My things had arrived at work, so I unpacked them, read the instructions, and told my wife I'd be home late. I asked her to go to the town square without me. "Sure, kids, go ahead. I'll meet you there after work," I said. "Are you sure? I can wait for you," she replied. "No, go ahead and have fun, but don't stay out too late." I laughed. "Okay, just don't take too long." I got home at my usual time, and the first thing I did was attach a GPS tracker to her golf cart. Then I placed listening devices on the phones in the kitchen and bedroom, and I set up video cameras in those same rooms. I hid the receivers in the garage behind a box and connected them to our home computer in the living room. The cameras worked well, so I called the house phone from my cell to test the listening devices. I was pleased with how it all turned out. In half an hour, I had set up my own home to keep an eye on things, hoping it wouldn't lead to the end of my marriage. I could check everything from my laptop, as long as the home computer was turned on. After waiting for another 10 minutes, I changed my clothes and headed to the town square. It was always busy from 5 o'clock to 9 p.m. The square was filled with people, and the only times it was quiet were when it rained, which didn't happen often in Florida. I spotted Sarah dancing in the plaza and saw Esther chatting with 2 older ladies near the DJ. I grabbed 2 beers and went over to Esther. "I thought something happened to you," she said. "I was busy setting up my house," I replied a bit angrily. "Steve, sometimes it's better not to know everything," she said, looking concerned. "You're my friend, and I don't want to lose you." She held my hand tightly and looked sad, something I hadn't seen before. "I'd rather know what's going on because the uncertainty drives me crazy," I admitted. "I just don't want you to lose your way and do something foolish. I have plans for you that don't involve needing to help you out of trouble or worse. Maybe we're both wrong and she's still the girl you married." We both exchanged a look and knew deep down that she wasn't quite the same anymore. Sarah asked me to dance several times, and like a good husband, I joined her, trying to smile even if I felt awkward in front of so many people. Finally, around 8:30, we got back to our house. I didn't feel like getting close to her because I had too much on my mind and wouldn't have been able to focus anyway. She asked if everything was all right, and I just kissed her softly and told her I loved her. I tried to fall asleep, but it didn't work well. The next few days were normal. She talked with many people, making plans for different events. She was always busy. In the morning, I watched her get up and get ready after her shower. I really wished I could be home with her. She had coffee with some friends and then left for most of the day. On Friday at lunch, I decided to check on her. I looked at her while she slept and wished to be beside her. She went to the bathroom to take a shower, and then I heard the phone ring. It was Judy. She left a message for me to call her back. As I watched my wife get dressed, I noticed again how beautiful she still looked after all these years. She wore shorts, a tank top, and sandals, which seemed to be her everyday outfit, nearly every day. The camera in the living room pointed to the kitchen, and I saw her having coffee and a bagel while she tapped on her messages. Among the messages, there were 2 from groups she belonged to, and a quick one from Judy asking her to call back. I paused the video and went to get a cup of coffee from the dining room. While getting my coffee, I thought about how much our life had changed since moving. It had become more hectic, especially for Sarah. It felt like moving from a quiet farm to the busy streets of New York City. Sometimes it was fun because of all the different restaurants, but the non-stop activity wasn't what I imagined for my retirement. What I knew for sure was that when I retired, I wanted my own cappuccino machine. The coffee setup in the dining room was not great. Back at my desk, I pressed play and watched my wife eat breakfast while I enjoyed my coffee. I almost turned it off because watching someone eat can be quite dull, but I decided to let it run a bit longer. When she picked up the phone, I switched from video to audio. Technology is amazing. "Judy, it's Sarah. How are you?" she said. "Just wanted to check in about today." There was a short pause. "I'm not sure if I'm going," my wife replied. "I told you Steve wouldn't go for it." "He's just not that kind of person," she added. Judy laughed. "Well, you seem to be having a good time, at least, every time we meet up. And Carl has been really interested in you since last Thursday." "Last Thursday was pretty wild, wasn't it? I've never been with 2 guys before, but it was fun. It felt strange, yet enjoyable." My heart started to sink as I listened. "Well, it's just going to be the 6 of us today," she said. Connie and her husband were going to the doctor. "Maybe we can meet at your place," she suggested. "I told you from the start that it wasn't happening here, and I still feel the same way. Especially after the last party Steve went to. I love my husband, and I would never do that in our home. Well, we can meet again at my place. If you can come a little early, I could use some help getting ready." Judy sounded excited. I ended the call. For the next 2 hours, I barely did anything but try to breathe. I pressed the Do Not Disturb button on my work phone and turned off my cell phone. I should have been angry, shouted really loud, and rushed home to talk to my wife. But in a way, I wasn't shocked. I felt like I had lost someone close to me. I was filled with shock, sadness, and regret. Esther was right once again. She seemed to know everything about everyone. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well and needed to leave. He looked worried because my face probably looked pale. It felt like all the blood had left my body and I could hardly move. I checked my watch and didn't want to think about what my wife was doing at that moment. I got in my car and just started to drive. Without thinking, I ended up in the neighborhood where we lived now. If I wasn't so upset, I might have driven to Judy's house and confronted everyone. But what good would that have done? A night in jail wouldn't answer my questions. I parked in my driveway, got out of the car, and stood in front of the house. I just couldn't go in. I found myself in the town square, sitting in a chair and sipping on a drink. It was likely after 6:30 now. I must have been on my fourth drink when a woman in a wheelchair came beside me. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. You have nothing to apologize for," I replied. "By the way, I owe you a drink." I walked over to the bar. "One fresh beer for this lady," I announced, bowing slightly. When I came back, Esther looked at me and asked, "How much have you had to drink already?" "Not much," I answered quickly. "Getting drunk isn't going to change anything." "I know," she said. "You'd think after all these years I would have seen everything. But Steve, she just got caught up in the moment and the wrong crowd. Not everyone here changes partners and runs after every person they meet. Look at me. No one has approached me in years." At least that made me smile. "She doesn't know, does she?" I asked. "No, but if you leave my car unlocked in the driveway, she'll think something is wrong." "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. It hasn't hit me fully yet. My biggest question is why." "I've already got guesses," she said. "I'm not sure how long this will go on. I keep saying it, but please be careful. I know you're not drunk yet, and it's probably best if you don't drink more tonight. If you don't want to go home, you can stay at my place. There's plenty of room. I have an extra bedroom, so you won't have to share with me." Even though Lucy might think otherwise, Esther always knew how to make me smile, and I liked that about her. I'm still figuring things out. The only thing I really know is that my time with her is over. You do realize she'll be looking for you here, right? I'm not hiding from her. If she's smart, she won't say anything. After 5 beers, I thought about having one more, but I decided against it for now. My offer still stands if you need a place to crash. She gave me her address and phone number. My daughter is coming to visit for a couple weeks, but there's enough space for everyone. I was about to get her another beer when I noticed an angry woman coming toward me. "Esther, I think I should head home," I said, pointing to my wife who was walking toward us. "Maybe I'll see you here tomorrow if I'm still around." I tried to laugh, but it didn't come out right. "Please don't get into any trouble. Are you still here?" "Like I said, I have plans for later." "Steve, where have you been? Your phone is off." I looked at my wife. "I think it's time for a serious talk," I said as I walked toward my house, leaving her behind. She started talking quickly, trying to catch up with me. I turned to her and said, "Can you please be quiet until we get home?" The look she gave me could have frozen water. We walked the rest of the way in silence. "First, I had to move your car so I could park," she said as she opened the front door. She went to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat at the table. "Mister, you have a lot to explain." I thought about grabbing a beer, but realized I had already drank too much to start this talk with my wife. It was time to begin. Looking at her, I tried to keep my voice steady or I would lose control. I already knew who it was and how long it had been happening. I just needed a good reason. "Don't tell me it's because you weren't happy at home." As soon as I said that, she knew it was too late. A few sips of her wine passed, and I waited for her answer. "You know, you would have liked it. That doesn't mean I care about you any less, but once you got involved, you would have enjoyed it. That's not what I want to know. All I really want is to understand why you were one of only 2 men I ever trusted. And don't think for a second you did it only for me, because you always did. But I was curious. You know what they say about curiosity, right? Steve, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I always thought you were smart enough to figure it out eventually, but everyone kept saying you'd come to your senses eventually. I knew they were wrong. So why did you keep going? You could have had fun and just stopped without anybody knowing. Steve, I'm about to turn 60. I've been a wife and mother since I was 20. I didn't go wild when I was younger. I've tried to be a good wife and mother. Honestly, I've been approached by many of your so-called good friends at parties. While the other wives were having a good time, I stayed loyal to you. And I believe you stayed loyal to me too. I guess I just got tired of being the good girl. I haven't been with many men, but none of them could compare to you. They're not better. They were just different. I suppose you loved them both at the same time at one point. Now, that surprised her. I don't know how you found out about this, but yes, I have been with 2 men once. It didn't feel as good as being with just one because there was too much happening all at once. But at least I tried it. I love you just as much as I did when we got married, and you've gained from what I've learned over the past few months in our relationship. You can see I'm no longer the shy bride I used to be. I want to say that nothing has really changed, and we can keep going as we did before. If you want me to stop what I'm doing, I will, but only if that's what you want. If you want to try it yourself, there are quite a few women I know who might want to get to know you. It doesn't have to end our relationship. I wish I had taken that drink. My mouth felt dry, my hands were shaking, and the anger I was holding inside was starting to come out. So why didn't you just leave me in our old home where I was happy and unaware? Steve, I would never do that to you. I love you. Honestly, I don't want to see what you might do if you truly were angry with me. But in my view, a wife shouldn't give herself to just anyone who asks. Did you visit Carl today? I know he was excited to see you at Judy's this afternoon, Steve. I need to say that I still love you. And that's just me wanting to explore a little. It's not like I was expecting any big consequences from that. You could have already given me something unwanted. Sarah, those guys were involved with every woman who showed interest. Can you really say you haven't caught something from them? I know I will get checked tomorrow, and I suggest you do the same. What angered me the most was her careless attitude about all of this. She didn't seem sorry at all. She said she would have stopped if I wanted her to, but that was about it. Steve, what are we going to do next? Like I said, I want to stay married to you because I love you, but I feel like I still love you, Sarah. I think I don't want to be married to you anymore. You have been dishonest with me for a long time. You have made a joke of what was once a good marriage, and I can't trust you anymore. I will be sleeping in the guest room tonight. If you want to have anyone over, I won't be a bother. She looked at me with disapproval when I said that, but I wasn't finished. Tomorrow will not be easier, but at least now I know where we stand. She tried to say more, but I told her I had enough of the lies for one night. I went into the other bedroom and tried to sleep. I could hear her crying and talking on the phone until I finally fell into a restless sleep. I was right. My troubles didn't go away overnight. I showered, shaved, and headed to work. I still felt terrible, and even though my boss told me to go home, I needed to be away from her for as long as I could. I found out online that I was in a bad situation. In Florida, everything gets split right down the middle. The house, our savings, both of our retirement funds, everything. I wanted to cry. I definitely didn't want the house. If she bought me out, she would take most of our savings. Since I made more money than her, I would have to pay her support. And since my retirement fund was much larger than hers, she would take half of mine. No matter how I looked at it, I was in trouble. For the second night in a row, I went straight to the town square. At least tonight I knew Sarah wouldn't be worried and look for me. At least not until later in the evening. Well, don't leave me in the dark. What happened last night? And don't skip the important parts. I shared the details with Esther and told her how it all went down. I checked online and saw that I was about to lose a lot in the divorce. Then I noticed a tall woman walking over who handed Esther a drink. It wasn't Lucy this time. It was my daughter, Catherine. She lives up north and will be spending the next 2 weeks with me. She doesn't drink beer and likes to dance, but don't hold that against her. So you are the famous Steve Moore I've heard about. From what my mom said, I expected you to be a tall movie star who could do anything. I looked at Esther. Honestly, I just told her you were a decent guy. We all laughed. I guess you'll be staying with us for a couple of weeks. I looked at Esther again. Is there anything you haven't told her about me yet? Let me think. No. What can I do? If you're the only person who makes me feel better and cares about me, has she always been this way? I asked her daughter. She laughed. It's nothing compared to how she used to be. At least she doesn't smoke anymore. I offered Catherine my chair and went to find another one. See, I told you? I said he is cute and a good catch. Mom, when will you stop trying to set me up? When you find a good man or I retire, whichever happens first. Okay, ladies, and I say that lightly. Esther, what are you planning for tonight? Esther quickly responded. I want to listen to music and have a few drinks. I thought it would be nice if you could show my daughter around the neighborhood. She hasn't been here in a long time. Maybe you can also encourage her to eat something. The girl is so thin and really could use some good food. Catherine and I exchanged glances. Looks like I have my task, Steve. You don't have to, Catherine started to say, but I interrupted. I'd love to. I haven't eaten anything today anyway. I took her to see the shops near the plaza and gave her a tour of the area. The music playing made things nice, too. I'm sorry about your wife. Did she leave you for a long time? I asked her. Did your mom skip any details about me? Not really. She even mentioned a few guys your wife spent time with. I wasn't sure how to react to that, so I just shook my head. What do you want to eat? This place has every kind of food. We chose Italian. We started to chat. Actually, I did most of the talking. I shared things with her that her mom hadn't told her. I mentioned that I was still working and probably would be for a while. Has your mom always been this wild? Steve. She's much calmer now. I thought she and my dad would split many times before he passed away. The best way to describe my mom is like this. She was free-spirited. She smoked, drank, and liked to have fun. But she stayed loyal to my father her whole life. If you looked at her, you might think she was just wandering through life, but she liked it that way. Those who stayed close to her became her good friends. Those who judged her, she didn't bother with. She likes you, my friend. Sam. With a mom like that, you must have been wild as a child. Are you joking? She was the strictest mother ever. I had the earliest curfew of all my friends, and she had to meet every guy I dated. If any of them so much as looked at her, he was out. My mom was beautiful by any measure. My mom's influence was clear in my dad's friends' lives, more than once. Like I said, she acted carefree, but she was not. When my dad sold his business and moved here, I worried. But once my mom took charge, I knew things would be fine. Steve. My mom is a strong woman with clear views. If she likes you, you're in. If she doesn't, good luck to you. The food was great, and the talk was fun. Before we knew it, 2 hours had passed, and we went back to find her mom. She was still where we left her, holding a beer. So, did you two have a nice talk about me? I guess you're trying to figure out how to put me in a care home now, right? Are you serious? We've been trying to find the right guy so you can finally feel better about yourself and stop being down all the time. She's smiling a big smile. I knew it. He's better than the rest. Always thinking about others, not just himself. So, Steve, when are you going to move in? Esther. I don't want to be a bother, especially since your daughter is living there now. How many times do I have to tell you? I have a room, and it's not a bother. And who am I going to hang out with? Those two don't drink much. Besides, do you really want to spend the night with that lady you're seeing? Mom. Hey there. I'm just saying the truth, and he knows it. If he wants to be with someone like that, that's his choice. Some guys are okay with sharing their partners and letting them be embarrassed. I could never accept that. But everyone has their own choices. Steve, I'm sorry. Mom might have had too much to drink, and that's why she said that. No, it's fine. She's only saying what's been on my mind for a while now. Why don't I grab some things and meet you at your place? I need a good night's sleep, and I won't get that at my house, that's for sure. I mean, I told them I would probably see them in an hour and walk towards the house. I knew Sarah would want to talk again, but I needed time with her to figure out what to do. Where have you been? I was worried about you, Sarah said as soon as I walked in. I've just been in town getting some things ready, I told her. What kind of things? If you want to know where I'll be staying for the next few nights, why can't you just stay here? We can talk and sort things out. You still don't understand, do you? I don't like to share. Never have and never will. Do you really think I can just forget what you've done? How can I be around our friends knowing you might have been with most of their husbands? And how many other guys? I need some time away from you to think about what I want to do. Doesn't it matter to you that I still care about you, Sarah? People who love each other don't mess around with others behind their partners. I think you have a very wrong idea of what love is, Steve. I'll stop. I promise I won't do it again. But for how long? Until I trust you again? Or until a new guy comes along? You've really broken my trust in you. She just stared at me, not sure what to say. You know what was surprising? I was really angry with her, even more than I was about losing the life I had built for over 30 years. What kind of person had I become? I thought about how I might want to confront everyone involved, and I could have easily done that, or even confronted Sarah, but I just felt that she wasn't worth the fight. However, losing my home and my savings was something else entirely. I think I was just taking my time to figure out what to do next. I'm leaving for a couple of days. I just need a break before I do something I might regret. And please, keep your friends away from my house. I really don't want to see them messing around. Also, please don't call me. Not you or any of my so-called friends. Right now, you are the last people I want to talk to. I hope the kids don't call either, because I really don't want to explain what kind of person their mother has turned into. I just finished packing my suitcase. When are you coming back? Maybe the better question is if you're coming back at all. Why are you loading my suitcase into the car? I want to get on the road. Thankfully, there was a GPS in the car because this neighborhood is so big and filled with twists and turns. I would have struggled to find Esther's house. Even with the GPS, it took me over half an hour. Most of the nice homes were behind gates with a guard at the entrance, and Esther's place was no different. I told the guard my name, and before I could explain who I was visiting, he opened the gate. She must have let him know I was coming. After 3 left turns and 1 right, I finally found her house at the end of the street. Her house was much bigger than mine and looked really fancy. I took my bag and rang the doorbell. Lucy greeted me with a smile and let me in. Just a moment later, Catherine and Esther came to say hello. Once inside, they showed me around the house. It had a horseshoe shape with an extra section at one end. The living room, kitchen, and dining area were right as you walked in through the front door. Esther and Lucy's bedrooms were on one side, and the other side was nearly all taken up by a clear swimming pool. The layout was a bit strange, but it looked like the pool section was added later. Esther showed me to my room on the right side of the horseshoe. I liked that I would have both privacy and access to the pool. Esther told me that Catherine had a room next to the pool on the other side. My room was right across from the pool at the end of that side of the house. "Steve, don't expect me to wait on you," she said. "Now you know where the kitchen is. And since you will probably leave before I wake up in the morning, Lucy will make sure the coffee is ready for you if you want it. There are always bagels and other things in the fridge, too. If you want something special, just give Lucy a list. We have dinner at 6 every night, but if you plan to eat out, please let Lucy know so she doesn't cook for you. That's about it for the house rules. Feel free to make noise. By 10 o'clock, I'll be asleep anyway. If something happens to me during the night, just make sure that Lucy doesn't take me away before they can bury me." Lucy listened to Esther's serious words and rolled her eyes. She was familiar with Esther's ways. After chatting for a bit, Esther asked about every little detail between Sarah and me. She really was quite nosy. Meanwhile, Catherine sat quietly, sipping her wine. It seemed she was used to these talks with her mother. "Time for bed," Lucy said as she moved toward Esther in her wheelchair. "How many times do I have to tell you not to scare me like that? Are you trying to give me a heart attack?" Esther joked. "No, ma'am, just trying to help you get to bed," Lucy replied. "Remember what I told Steve? If I don't wake up in the morning, the maid did it." Lucy guided her mom back toward her room. "Welcome to the madness," Catherine said with a faint smile. "Can you believe what I've dealt with all my life?" Catherine continued. "Now, it's like water off a duck's back. Most of what she says is just her way of brightening up the day for those who don't know her like Lucy or I do. You're the new star of her world, so brace yourself for it. I don't mind. I've built up a tough skin over the years. Nothing can really hurt me now. Not even your wife," I shot back, glaring slightly. "Sorry, that was a bit rude. I guess I've spent too much time with my mother, but don't worry, it doesn't bother me anymore. I think she just thought our lives needed a little excitement. What bothers me most is that she doesn't seem truly sorry. She acts regretful for getting caught, but not for what she did. Sounds like my ex. Maybe she and my ex would get along. He used to blame me for his affairs. I guess I wasn't wild enough for him. My only regret is letting her plan our vacations. I always wanted to go on a cruise, but she refused. She couldn't stand the idea of being on a ship. So we traveled to various places, which was fun, but I would have loved to relax and do nothing for a week. Just sit back while someone else cooks and serves me for a change, I mused. You would have enjoyed a cruise. My only issue was my ex would find ways to annoy anyone who listened to his silly comments. I don't know why I stayed with him for so long. My mom told me to leave him at least 20 times after she found proof of his affairs. Finally, I got rid of him. He claimed he cheated because I wasn't enthusiastic enough. How do you get excited about a guy who just left his last girlfriend and is already looking for someone new? I was exhausted and just wanted to unpack. I apologized and said I should head to bed since Friday morning would come too early. I hung up my clothes, brushed my teeth, and was about to take a shower when I suddenly remembered the pool right outside the door. What the heck? I turned off the light, wearing only my underwear, and quietly went outside to the pool. The water was cool and felt great. I floated on my back, swam a few laps, and soon I was holding onto the edge. When I looked over at Catherine's room, I guessed she was about 55, but she looked younger. Her dark brown hair was cut short, making it easy to care for. She seemed to have a nice shape, though she was a bit round at the hips. It looked like she had more curves than Sarah. Both women had similar blue-gray eyes, but Catherine's lips were much fuller. I wondered if she had any beauty treatments. I swam another lap and got out of the pool. It felt refreshing. After that, I looked forward to a good night's sleep, which I did. Everyone but Lucy was asleep when I left around 6:30 the next morning. On the counter was a note with a house key and a gate key. I picked up the note and read, "I suppose you'll need these." I waved goodbye to the guard on my way out and spent the next 8.5 hours trying to keep busy. I thought about taking Sarah off my medical plan and removing her from my life insurance. Maybe I'd do it next week, I thought as I drove to my new place. Even though I had told her not to, Sarah still left me a voicemail saying she missed me and still loved me. I deleted it. I opened the gate, drove up to Esther's house, parked, and opened the front door. The smell of food filled the air. Instead of finding just a note about dinner, I was in for a real home-cooked meal. There was baked chicken, baked potatoes, whole green beans, and a green salad. For dessert, we had cold watermelon and rich coffee. Around 6:30, Esther announced we were all going to the town square. "You two take the other golf cart," Esther told Catherine and me. Lucy helped Esther into the garage and loaded her wheelchair into another cart. I noticed Lucy did this every evening after just a little bit of Esther's complaining. The two of them left, and Catherine and I followed. "Are you going to dance, Steve?" she asked on the way. "Yes, but not very well. I enjoy dancing with a lovely partner and can handle a few slow dances, but country music isn't my thing." She laughed. "So you don't even know how to dance the grapevine?" I gave her a look that said she didn't even ask. She laughed again and said, "Okay, I'll drop it." By the time we found a parking space, she had already finished half of her first beer. She saved 2 chairs for us next to her. "Can you believe it? Some old guy almost tried to take our chairs. Even when I told him I was keeping the chairs for you, he said I couldn't save them. I warned him I would be very upset if he touched them. He left, looking unhappy. Esther pointed out that your wife was with all their friends in the square. She said it seemed like your wife was trying to show off what she was doing. I didn't agree with Esther, but I wasn't surprised by anything anymore." When the slow song started, I held out my hand and asked Catherine to dance. Catherine looked at me, then at Esther, and finally stood up. We stayed on our side of the square as I tried not to step on her toes. I didn't have to worry about her. From the first steps, I could tell she knew how to dance. For a moment, it felt like she was leading us. As we danced smoothly across the square, I wondered if I asked Catherine to dance because Sarah was there. Yes, because she was around, but also no, because I wanted to see how Catherine felt in my arms. It had been a long time since I hugged or danced with another woman besides Sarah. When the song ended, we returned to our chairs. "You two looked good together," Esther said as we walked back. "Steve, I thought you said you couldn't dance. You're not bad for an old man," she teased. Catherine laughed, and I couldn't get mad because it was true. Catherine and I danced for what felt like hours, and I even tried to glide closer to Sarah's group. Sarah danced almost every song. At one point, she told me, "Steve, I don't like being used. It makes me feel bad. So if you don't really want to dance with me but just want to make your wife jealous, please don't ask me again." I was trying to show her that I was okay, but I also enjoyed dancing with her. "Believe it or not, you're not as skinny as my wife," I said without thinking. I quickly added, "Not as well fed." She looked at me and asked, "Are you saying I'm fat?" I quickly said, "Not at all. I just mean I'm not worried about holding you tight like I am with Sarah. I always worried I might hurt her if I squeezed too hard." "You really need to work on giving compliments. They should be sincere," she replied. "Just try again." She smiled and said, "Why do you want to dance with me?" I said, "Because you're a great dancer and very light on your feet." "Good recovery," she said with a laugh. When we looked back, we saw Esther waving at Lucy, inviting her to dance again. Just before 9 o'clock, we all went home. Sarah had watched me dance with Catherine several times, and I thought she might come over to talk to me. I was really relieved she didn't. Back at the house, Esther said goodnight to me before Lucy put her to bed. Lucy then asked if I could check on a few repairs that needed to be done around the house. I told her that I would be free all day Saturday and I would be glad to fix anything that needed fixing. Catherine and I talked until almost midnight. She shared stories about her early days with her mom and dad, which sounded both funny and wild at the same time. When we said goodbye, I went back to my room for the second night in a row. I took off my clothes and jumped into the cool, dark water. There is nothing better than being in the water on a hot night. I didn't notice the lights went out at Catherine's until I saw that the curtains were still open. Thankfully, it was dark, or she might have spotted me swimming in my uniform. I swam a few laps, mostly on my back. 20 minutes later, I got out and walked back to my room. My wife said I wasn't shy, but no one could see into the backyard, and it was pretty dark. Besides, the only rooms that looked over the pool were Catherine's and mine. On Saturday, I worked on many things, from fixing stuck doors to leveling cabinets and pulling a lot of hair from the sink and bathtub drains. A few sprinkler heads needed replacing, and I had to fix a leak under the kitchen sink by 3 o'clock. I did what I could and sat by the pool, holding a drink. Esther rolled up to me and said, "I knew I kept you around for a reason. I thought that if you had your own place, you'd know how to fix things here." And as always, I turned out to be right. She asked, "Hasn't anyone done anything around here in the last 10 years? I had a repairman for a while, but he tricked me every month saying he fixed this and that, but never really did anything. After I let him go, I only called someone in when something broke. Tomorrow, I'm going to Home Depot to get a few supplies and finish the rest of the repairs." She smiled briefly, then looked serious. "Steve, I know a good lawyer, and he's available to help you. I talked to him about your situation, and he'll handle the paperwork for free. But he did give me one piece of advice that you may or may not like. He said that if you are worried about losing half of what you own, then just don't do anything." "Don't do anything?" I asked. "That's correct. You can live your life, and she can live hers. You can keep half the money in your checking and savings, and you both can live separately. If there is no divorce, you will still own half of the house and can have a say in what happens there, even if you don't live there. If something happens suddenly, you will have the chance to hide your earnings. It's not the best plan, and she won't have what she wants unless you decide to go back to her." "You don't want to go back to her, do you?" she asked. "Not a chance," I replied. "But I will need to get a few things I want to keep." Esther said, "Steve, it's still your house. The lawyer said you can come and go as you like. I like that idea. You could stay here, and instead of paying rent, you just need to take care of the place. What do you think? You know, Sarah's going to start putting pressure on me to come home or at least decide what we're doing. I can't keep avoiding her forever. People can live apart for years before getting divorced. If you're not living together, then the money you earn is yours to spend as you like. Let her live on her pension and see how that feels." That idea sounded better and better. We didn't argue, but raised our glasses to our new plan on Saturday night. I asked not to go to the square. I was a bit tired and didn't want to bump into Sarah. "Why don't you and Catherine go for dinner? I'll even treat you for what you did tonight. I thought we agreed on free rent. The deal starts on Monday. Take it to Anthony's and put it on my tab." "You have a tab?" "After 27 years here, most places give me good service. I must be something of a regular around here. So I'll pay for dinner. I have another restaurant in mind." "Suit yourself, big spender," Esther said as she walked away. El Ranchero was small and quiet. It had the best Tex-Mex food in Florida, along with a cold bottle of sangria and great company. For that night, I forgot all my worries. We didn't talk about my past or hers. We focused on what was happening right now. "You're really a nice guy, you know that? When my mom first told me about you, I thought you were just out to use her. Steve, she can be strong-willed, but sometimes she trusts too easily. I can't imagine anyone taking advantage of her, especially with Lucy around. Believe it or not, after my father died, 2 men tried to win her over and marry her. One got the hint and the other had to be gently pushed away. Let's just say he moved somewhere up north due to health issues." She laughed, and I felt a bit uneasy. "Don't worry, I know you're harmless, but I checked you out after my mom mentioned you again. Where do you think my mom gets all her information? She has a private investigator on her team. Let's just say my mom likes to stay informed, and it keeps her safe. I saw Catherine in a whole new light. So what else do you know about me? Everything important. First of all, you're a caring person who can be trusted completely. That's hard to find these days. It seems like everyone looks out for themselves first, but you really care about others. Does your report say which side of the bed I like to sleep on?" I said, feeling a bit annoyed. I didn't like the idea of someone looking into my life without me knowing. That seems sneaky, Steve. I had to make sure the report didn't contain those details, but since you're right-handed, I'd guess you sleep on the right side of the bed, and she was right about that. After dinner, we went shopping and then returned to her mom's house. At one point, we held hands, but I pulled away when I realized it. Sarah and I had always walked hand in hand without even thinking about it. It was just something we did. I miss that closeness now. Over the next week, I got to know Catherine much better. Sarah kept her distance, and I was thankful for that. I soon found that I was starting to enjoy my new freedom. Esther's lawyer had prepared the divorce papers and was just waiting for me to decide when to sign them. We took Esther to the square most of the evening. I danced with Catherine because I wanted to, not to upset Sarah. To me, it felt finished between Sarah and me. Just thinking about being with her made me feel empty inside. I asked Catherine how long she had been divorced and if she was seeing anyone. She looked at me curiously but didn't answer. We wandered around the shops, and at one point our hands touched and stayed together. On the way back, we were both quiet. Lucy was watching TV, so Esther was busy. We glanced at each other, wanting to say or do something, but neither of us knew what. Legally, I was still married, but the feelings I had for Sarah were gone. After overhearing a phone conversation, all I could picture was her with another man. It made me sad that we had lost what we once had. The TV was on, but I couldn't sleep. I looked out the window and saw that Catherine's light was off. If it had been on, I might have gone to talk to her. I felt lonely. After 36 years, I was alone and unsure of what to do. I turned off the lights and stepped outside to the pool. It was still warm and the air felt heavy. I walked back and forth in the water to cool off. "Is the water still warm?" Catherine asked, looking down. My mind was racing. It felt nice. I had almost forgotten what it was like to swim on a warm night. We had fun for a while, and after about 20 minutes, I decided to head to the kitchen first. I thought it would be better not to go in at the same time. "Did you sleep better last night?" Esther asked. "Much better, thank you," I replied, walking to grab a cup of coffee and a Danish pastry. Lucy smiled and offered to make me breakfast. "This is enough, but I appreciate it." Catherine came in about 20 minutes later. She greeted everyone and stopped when she saw me with a cup of coffee. She walked over and gave her mom a kiss on the top of her head. "Hey, Mom, what fun things do you have planned for me today?" she asked, smiling brightly. Later that evening, we had a barbecue. I cooked steaks, shrimp, mushrooms, and onions. It took me almost an hour to clean and prepare the grill so it would work well. I found out it hadn't been used in more than 5 years. I joked that maybe there were other things around here that also needed some care. After that, Esther said she would come to my room later, but we moved on to other topics. I spent nearly 6 hours going between Home Depot and home, changing air conditioner filters, adding Freon to the car's air conditioning, and fixing the sprinkler timer. I made a list of things to do and told Lucy to let me know if she saw anything that needed fixing. That evening, we all went to the town square, and as usual, Sarah was there. This time, she came over and asked to speak to me alone. "When are you coming home?" That was her first question. Then she asked, "Are you going to leave me because of this?" I told her I wasn't doing anything right now. I didn't know where we stood, but I needed some space from her. I feel like a pawn being pushed to do things I didn't really want to do. With your careless attitude, I don't know if we will ever be like we used to. She kept asking how long. A week? A month? 5 months? I need to know. It seemed like she wanted to be sure I wouldn't arrive home while she had company over. God knows I would leave you in a heartbeat if I thought you were having a good time with someone else in our home. She replied, "You think our house is just yours? It's ours. Do you want to have your gatherings just on your side of the house? I won't have parties in our home. Never have. Never will. I just want to know what your plan is and whether you're staying with that woman forever." That woman, as she called her, was the one who told me everything. She informed me about Sarah's friends, and when I said Sarah wouldn't cheat on me, she said to watch out. When Sarah's friends avoided looking me in the eye, I started to put the pieces together. So this woman turned out to be more aware of what was happening than I was. I just wanted to know if we had a shot at fixing things. "There's always a chance," I said. As I returned to my friends, Esther asked, "So she really wants you back?" I confirmed yes, she wanted to know if we still had a chance. Did she give you a timeline? Esther asked. No, I replied. I just told her I wasn't going to leave her right now, but I needed time. Esther said to Lucy, See? He's not foolish. I thought he might go back to that woman, but I believe in him. Catherine and I shared a moment with our eyes. Do you want to dance? I asked, holding out my hand to her. I wanted to show my wife how well I could dance now. Honestly, I still wasn't great at it, especially with fast songs. But I gave it a try anyway. I noticed Lucy and Esther laughing when I stepped on Catherine's foot. She seemed glad when I decided to call it a night. Did I think we'd have a repeat of last night's fun? I didn't really think so, but I hoped. As I looked at the clock, I waited for Lucy to tuck Catherine's mom in. Just as I was about to turn off the light, I heard a knock on the door. I turned off the light and opened it. Catherine rushed in and declared, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Those were the last words I heard for the next 2 hours. Most nights with Catherine felt like this, until I realized we only had 2 nights left together. Lucy would glance at us from time to time, but Esther didn't seem to notice much. On our last night, we begged to go to the town square. We ordered pizza, opened a bottle of wine, and enjoyed our meal by the pool. Hot cheese can be tricky, especially if you're not careful. I learned that quickly. I don't want you to go, I told Catherine, putting my arm around her. But I have to, she replied. I have a job up north, and my boss won't like it if I call to say my new friend won't let me leave. What about when can we meet again? I asked. You can visit any weekend, but I won't be back until Thanksgiving. We can talk on the phone, and I have a video set up so we can see each other while we chat. That could be fun. You're quite the charmer, aren't you? She teased. You have no idea, I said with a grin. At 8 o'clock, we got up, had breakfast, and began to plan her trip to the airport. Steve, could you please take Catherine to the airport? Cabs are so expensive and unreliable, Lucy asked while we ate. Sure, I don't have plans for the day. I'd be happy to drive you, I replied. Great. By the way, your wife was looking for you last night. I told her you had a date to deal with her complaints. Yeah, I wanted to shut her up when she started whining, I said. Steve, we should keep things calm, Lucy pointed out. I couldn't hold back. I had seen her flirting with other guys all night and needed to put her in her place. Are you going back to her? Lucy asked. I shook my head and kept my eyes on Catherine. Good. Let her know you've moved on, Lucy said. I knew she was right, but my mind was focused on Catherine. I packed my car while Catherine said goodbye to my mom and Lucy. I watched as she gave Lucy an envelope, then hugged and kissed her goodbye. The drive home was quiet. I was only just over the speed limit. Trucks were honking at me, cutting me off. You're going to get us into an accident, I warned, feeling nervous. I'm just being careful, I said, trying to keep calm. That's not true, came the reply. You're just putting off what we both know will happen. Step on it now. If I miss my flight, I'll have to take a late flight home, and I don't want that. After 11, I can't even get past security without a ticket. We had already said goodbye at the outside gate. I'm going to miss you so much, I told her as I kissed her, trying to make the most of the time we had left. Just don't let me hear about you flirting with anyone or showing off your dance moves, I joked. Mom and Lucy will keep me updated on you. I pulled her close for one last kiss. She looked into my eyes, kissed me again, waved goodbye, and walked into the terminal. The drive home felt long and empty. September and October had been stressful months. Sarah and I talked occasionally, but we both needed some kind of closure. I put it off for as long as I could, but by early November, I was done avoiding the truth. I can't go back, I told her over dinner. Too much has happened. I'm still upset with you, but I'm finally ready to move on. Steve, I never meant to hurt you. I was just fooling myself. I hoped we could get back together, but deep down I knew it wasn't going to happen. We had some good times, right? Yes, we did, I replied, feeling sad. I'm just sorry it's come to this. She started to cry. Are you sure you don't want to try again? I promise I'll be loyal this time. Like I said, too much has happened. Whenever we dated others, I asked if you were with them, and we both know how messy things got with Connie and Judy. There just wasn't enough trust. That night, we decided to end things for good. She wanted the house, and we agreed she would buy it back from me. We didn't discuss any other details, like support or retirement funds. I told her I would keep her on my health plan for the rest of the year, and I only needed to take a few things from the house. Leaving her the rest of the belongings felt like my best move. I thought I handled everything well and we parted ways, not as friends but not as enemies either. After almost 40 years and 2 kids, fighting served no purpose. Still, I felt down. It felt like something inside me had broken that day. For about 2 weeks, Esther and Lucy kept their distance. Then they told me it was time to stop feeling sorry for myself. Catherine remained my only source of comfort. We talked, emailed, or messaged each other almost every day. Both of us were busy with work, but I counted the days until I could leave that place. Something important felt missing from my life. I had been feeling a bit lost for over 30 years, and things were getting tougher. Chapter 3. A New Beginning. Everyone in the house was waiting eagerly for Catherine to come back, and I was getting nervous as the day went by slowly. On Wednesday, I left work early and drove to my new home, or, really, Esther's house. I parked in the driveway, ready to pick Catherine up at the airport that night. I walked in the front door, and there she was, talking to her mom and Lucy. I think I stood there for a moment, just looking at her. I wanted to rush over, hug her tightly, and talk about the 3 months we had been apart. "Hi, Steve," she said, smiling with that beautiful smile. In that moment, I realized I loved her and wanted her more than anything. We had never said the L word to each other, but I felt she knew too. "Come on, give her a kiss before you just stand there," Esther said with a grin. "I may be old, but I'm not silly." Lucy told her to be quiet. Last time they were together, they couldn't stop being close. At least this time, we didn't need 2 rooms. Though I was still frozen, Catherine moved in. We shared a kiss that lasted about 2 minutes before we stopped for air. "If I didn't know any better, I'd say you two should find a place," Esther joked. But dinner was almost ready. "Give her another kiss and we'll meet you in the dining room," Esther said, urging Lucy to hurry them along. "I really missed you," I said, feeling a bit emotional. "Let's get over there before your mom gets worried. We have the next 4 nights to catch up." We walked into the dining room hand in hand. "Calm down, or I'll have Lucy splash some water on you. You're acting like how I did with your father, and I'd rather not remember that," Esther smiled, which made me feel like I had her support. I hoped so anyway. We spent more time together in my room than anywhere else. I danced with her most of the night. I didn't want to let her go, and yes, I was still a terrible dancer, but at least I was trying to improve. On our first night together, I told her I was completely in love with her. When she didn't say it back, I felt a bit worried. But I had always been the bold one. The next morning, when I reached out to touch her, she was already up, dressed, and eating breakfast with her mom. "Did you sleep well?" Esther looked at me, probably expecting me to blush. I would have, but Catherine kept me awake for most of the night. Catherine nearly choked on her coffee at that. I guess she really took after her mother after all. That night's dinner was wonderful. I cooked a deep-fried turkey and Lucy worked her magic in the kitchen while Catherine and her mom went out. I ate too much. Actually, we all ate too much, so we had to wait until 8 o'clock for dessert. The Dutch apple pie with cinnamon ice cream and the fresh French mulberry tart were delicious, but they definitely added extra pounds to my waist. We had leftovers for 2 days. Cooking a 22-pound turkey for just 4 people was not a good idea. On Friday night, after a nice evening with Catherine, she wanted to have a serious talk. "Steve, what are we doing here? What do you want from this?" she asked. "I've told you how I feel. I love you, and I want to be with you for the rest of my life. I don't know how to say it more clearly. Do you? You live and work in Florida, and I'm in New Jersey. I won't retire until I'm 62, which is 7 years away, and you have just over 4 years left before your retirement. That's a long time apart. I know it won't be easy, but in the end, it will be worth it. I love you, Steve. Love is beautiful but can fade. After a year or 2, does the spark disappear?" she worried. "What will we do? Where will we live? Do you want to stay with my mom forever?" She was asking hard questions. "I have some savings and a decent retirement plan. With Social Security too, we might not be rich, but we will have enough to live." "Do you want to retire in New Jersey?" "Absolutely not. I'm done with these cold winters. I want to enjoy the sun and feel the warm sand. But I am worried. Sarah is gone and I have lost my home. We can buy a new house here or get a condo by the beach. I just want to be with you. Let's not rush into decisions. Just give us a chance." She smiled and kissed me again, but then she pulled back, looking worried about our future. I felt the same way, but I knew I wanted her. The rest of the weekend was tense, but we stayed close and had some tough talks. Our ride to the airport was more relaxed than before. Our eyes met often, and we held hands, but I felt a bit anxious. I took her bags out of the trunk and helped her with them, then wrapped my arms around her. Catherine, I love you truly. I know this is coming fast, but I believe it's the right choice. Please think about it. No pressure, just think about us. She looked up and smiled, giving me a sweet kiss before heading into the terminal. As she walked away, I felt a chill. It was that uneasy feeling when you think you might lose something important. When I got home, Esther looked at me with concern. Then I realized it wasn't really my home. It was Esther's home, and I was just a guest, though a welcomed one. In a gentle voice, Esther said, "You think too much about what my daughter says. I've known her for a long time, even longer than you. She's just a bit scared, that's all. I wanted to trust her, but I wasn't as confident as she was. Catherine was about to come back from her vacation, and I had some kind of plan in my mind. The change I felt was slow, and I didn't really notice it until Lucy had a family issue and had to leave for a couple of days. Lucy, take care of what you need to. I can manage everything at home. You don't know what you're getting into." "Maybe I should find a temporary job until I get back," she said. "And there's no time. Mind your own business. Don't worry about me." "I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about Esther. Go on. We'll be fine." It was clear that Lucy earned every penny Esther paid her. Esther could be tough, or maybe just very demanding. The food wasn't as good as Lucy's, and I was counting the hours until she got back. The next evening, we went to listen to some music in the town square. The music was from the 50s and seemed aimed at older folks. Esther was drinking a beer and chatting with another woman. Then Sarah showed up out of nowhere. "Steve?" she asked, looking a bit unsure, not knowing what to expect. "I'm doing really well, can't you tell?" My sudden anger surprised both of us. "Why do you even care? Don't you have enough attention from your friends, or are you just looking for more drama? Why don't you go back to your friends and find one of them?" I was almost shouting. I didn't care that everyone was listening to us, and things were getting worse. I'll never forget the look on her face. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she looked horrified, covering her mouth with her hands. Sarah couldn't say a word. I just kept on pushing my thoughts at her. "Please, just leave me alone!" She ran away, crying, and even lost a shoe in the process. Now everyone was staring at me, including Esther. "What?" I yelled at those still watching. "What would you say to your ex-wife, who after 35 years is trying to have fun with everyone?" People looked away, feeling awkward. "Well, that's the most excitement I've seen here in a year," Esther said, glancing my way. "I think it's time for us to leave this place. You've made a few people think." For the next 3 days, Esther only had 1 beer each night. She was still alert, but seemed a bit down. "Are you okay, Esther? You seem kind of sad." "Just a little tired. How are you and my daughter doing?" she asked. "Not as well as I'd like, but I think I understand a bit of what's happening. Listen to me, she can be a real pain, but you won't find a more caring and honest person. And that's not just because she's my daughter. And she's not just any ordinary woman. Her big smile reminded me of the old Esther. Thank goodness Lucy was finally back. She arrived a day late, but she was here. "How did it go?" was the first question that slipped out of my mouth. "Good, I wonder. And how on earth do you do that?" More questions followed without me even thinking. Every day, Lucy was a far better cook than I was. The dinner she made on her first night back reminded me of my mom's roast beef, but it was even better. I didn't go out to hear music that night. 2 nights ago, I embarrassed myself and needed some time to cool off. My issues with Catherine had gotten the best of me, and I took it out on Sarah, not that she didn't deserve it. "You sure made a mess out there," Lucy said as she walked in, pushing Esther's wheelchair ahead of her. "Everybody is talking about it. The vote is about 65% in your favor, and it would be more if you weren't so harsh. Most people feel the same as you do, but they were too shy to say anything until yesterday." "But not now, Steve. What Lucy is saying is that you're doing a good job. Since you left your unfaithful wife, some people see you as a local hero. I think some spouses who were unsure before have changed their minds now. There might be more couples in trouble before people forget your outburst." Well, I hope your comments didn't throw me off too much because I was starting to miss the old Steve, she said. The week ended on a bright note, at least for Esther. I loved Christmas, but my kids were upset I wasn't going to Jacksonville to be with them. Sarah was going, and I knew they wanted it to feel like old times, but that wasn't going to happen. Of course, my kids didn't support her, but my daughter asked why I couldn't forgive her mother after almost 40 years together. When I asked her what she would do if her husband cheated on her, it left her speechless. I bought gifts for everyone and sent them through UPS early this year so I could put them under the tree in time. This was my first Christmas alone, and I felt really down about it. Even though Esther and Lucy now felt almost like family, I missed my own children. Steve, can you pick up Catherine at the airport on Wednesday? Getting around will be tricky, and you'll just be here feeling sorry for yourself anyway, Esther said as she started to decorate the fake Christmas tree. And if you want anything special to eat, just let Lucy know. I like ham and goose for Christmas, but I'm open to almost anything else. I added yams and crescent rolls to the long list of food and figured Lucy would be in the kitchen most of the day while I entertained Esther and Catherine. Kissing Catherine brightened my mood, but it still wasn't quite the same. We held hands and chatted, and on the way home she playfully teased me. I helped her settle into her room and was mixing celebration drinks when she came back in her winter clothes. It feels so good to be in shorts again, she said. We probably have about a foot of snow up north, and the temperature is expected to drop to 30 degrees by the end of the week. If that happens, I might stick around here for another week. She glanced at me as I served the drinks. I raised my glass and suggested a toast to new friends and new beginnings. I touched our glasses and took a sip of eggnog. Why not go visit your mom? I'm helping Lucy with dinner tonight, I replied. Okay, Lucy. How long has she been feeling unwell? What's wrong? There was worry in her eyes. I don't know what you mean, I explained. You know, some days she seems better and other days not so much. But I've known her so long that I can tell when something isn't right. When she only has one beer all night and looks worn out by 8 o'clock, that shows something is off. I want to understand what's happening. She's 88 years old, and besides her heart issues, high cholesterol, and arthritis, she has the energy of a 50-year-old girl. I knew you would notice this while I was away, so I planned to help out in my absence. She's just tired, and it's getting worse. Her arms are aching, and I've had to increase her medication twice this year to keep her comfortable. What did the doctor say, Steve? She's on a program to manage her health. There is no cure, but medicine helps make her life easier. And please don't mention that I told you anything. She insists it's her private matter. She would be very upset if she found out I said anything. Catherine doesn't know either. The only thing she knows is that her mom is getting older. I give her updates, but Esther insists I keep the real issues to myself. She might not live long enough to see her 90th birthday. Hearing this made me feel much worse. Both my parents had passed away years ago, and I hoped not to feel that kind of hurt again for a long time. Dinner was good, as always. I jokingly said it was because I had cooked most of it myself, and Lucy just rolled her eyes. After dinner, I told Lucy to relax while I cleared the table and washed the dishes. I wished we had used paper plates instead of real ones. The dishwasher was packed with plates, pots, and serving dishes. I returned to the dining room with fresh coffee as everyone leaned back in their chairs, letting out sighs of contentment. By 8 o'clock, Esther was dozing off, and by 9 o'clock, she was in bed. "What's going on?" asked Catherine when we were finally alone. "This is my first vacation away from my family, and it hit me yesterday morning." I pulled her into an embrace and gave her a gentle kiss. "Having you here makes it a bit easier," I said with a smile. I remember how tough that first Christmas was. My ex was difficult, but that first year was still tough for me. "Is there anything I can do to make it easier for you?" she asked, pulling me in close. "Just being here with you makes things feel better." That night, we spent time together slowly and gently. We weren't trying to rush or overwhelm each other. We were just showing how much we missed one another. We had some things to talk about, but I decided to wait until we could do it in person. On Thursday morning, I told everyone I'd be away for most of the day. I was finishing up my holiday gift delivery, like someone waiting until the last moment to shop. The women I spoke to scolded me a bit. They didn't know I had already chosen gifts for each of them. I had put a lot of thought into what to buy. Esther was the easiest to shop for. She loved music. Even though she couldn't dance anymore, I found the perfect present. I got her an Apple iPod filled with 1,000 songs from her time. I knew she wouldn't wear tiny earphones, so I bought her some nice Bose headphones. What I spent on her wasn't much compared to all she had done for me in the past 6 months. Lucy was her own person, and I meant that in a good way. She wore the same uniform and hairstyle every day. Caring for Esther was almost her whole life. If I were in her place, I would miss simple pleasures. So I booked her 12 spa sessions. She would get full-body massages, hair treatments, and other nice things. She deserved it. I wanted to do more, but I was on a budget and spent a bit more for the last gift. Then there was Catherine. She was beautiful, smart, and fun to be around. We tried to avoid her mom like teenagers sneaking around, hoping not to cause any worry. We thought it was best to keep things private. Catherine was her daughter, and I was living in her house basically for free. I wasn't sure how her mom would react if she knew we were close, but if her mom didn't know, it wouldn't be a problem. Okay, so maybe she wasn't clueless and could see what was happening, or Lucy had said something. I picked the week of March 27th because that was usually a quiet time for work. After a long, cold winter, I knew Catherine would want to go somewhere warm. With a round-trip plane ticket and a ticket for a week-long Caribbean cruise ready, I was set. I stopped by the liquor store for 2 bottles of wine. We always opened gifts on Christmas Eve, even after the kids moved away. We'd have a late dinner, light a fire in the fireplace, play some soft music, and see what presents we each received that year. I didn't want any kitchen gadgets. I preferred more personal gifts, whether it was cozy socks, scented soap, or other carefully chosen items. Sarah always bought what she needed, so Christmas was a time for things she didn't really need but might enjoy. It didn't matter to me what she got because I was excited to see that special sparkle in her eyes when she opened my gift. That look was a better present than anything else. We didn't have a big dinner on Christmas Eve. We had salad, vegetable casserole, and stuffed chicken for dinner. The pecan pie was baking in the oven for dessert after we opened our gifts. I felt like a little kid. I was full of excitement, waiting for everyone to sit down in the living room with their gifts under the tree. I announced that I would be playing Santa. I knelt down and started pulling out one present at a time. I thought nobody knew what I wanted, but they were close. You can't go wrong with food gifts. Nuts, chocolate, wine, and fancy jams. That's what I received. When Lucy opened her present, her eyes sparkled. I think it was something she would never buy for herself. When I mentioned the hot stone massage, I think she blushed. Even though Esther was good with computers, she didn't care much for electronics. I showed her how the iPod was sorted by artist, band, and type of music. When I turned it on and placed the headphones on her ears, her eyes lit up. Elvis never sounded so good. I told Esther I had a Bose docking station on the way, so all she had to do was connect her iPod to it to listen to music while it charged. She gave me a hug and kissed my cheek. Now it was time for the last gift. I had planned a surprise for Catherine, but I changed my mind when she opened the plane ticket. She smiled and said it would be a nice break from the cold. When I handed her the next envelope, she was surprised. She looked at me and then back at the envelope for a few moments before opening it. She stared at the ticket, and I felt a bit worried as I waited for her reaction. Did I get it wrong? Then her smile began to grow, and her eyes met mine. "What's the matter?" her mother asked. "Just a little trip," she said, now fully smiling and mouthing the words, "Thank you." Everyone thanked each other for the gifts, and while Lucy went to get dessert, Catherine sat next to me. The small kiss was the dessert I really wanted, but the pecan pie with cold whipped cream was my favorite. "I assume there's another ticket in my room?" she asked, looking into my eyes. "Well, it's a double room, and I wouldn't want you to be lonely by yourself." "And I assume it has a double bed?" she added. "Of course it does, and I hope you don't get seasick because it's on an upper deck with a big balcony. If you want, you can check the computer to see what our room looks like in 360 degrees. Steve was there. It was just a room. No matter how big or fancy it was, it's the people in the room that make it special. The pie was delicious, and a glass of burgundy wine made the evening even better. Instead of shopping on the 26th for the sales, I wanted to show her some beach condos in Ormond and New Smyrna Beach that I had been interested in. You're right. It's time for me to think about the future and decide where I want to be in 2 to 10 years. I plan to stay in Florida, but I want to be closer to the water. I know I won't find a place like this on the west coast of Florida, but it is cheaper here. I explained this to her while we drove along at a relaxed pace for 2 hours. All 3 two-bedroom condos were nice, but I was surprised by the maintenance fees. I guess both insurance and upkeep were much higher near the coast. The fees were more than I was paying for my house in Temple Gardens. I would need to think about it more. What do you think about the beach areas? We could buy something and rent it out until we are ready to live there full-time. We could think of it as an investment and maybe even find a small house. That's what I would prefer. It seemed like I was doing most of the talking. But when do you plan to move out of your mom's house? I don't have a specific date, but it won't be until we get back from the cruise. I want to go through her house carefully and fix things up before I leave. I think she enjoys having me around, and I want to let her know that it's not her fault when I move out. I really care about your mom, and the more time I have, the easier it will be for Lucy to adjust. I don't want you to think you're pushing me away because of what I said last time. I know you're not making things hard for her, and you're right. My mom really likes you. Speaking of which, now that I have you here, where do you think we are headed? I hoped for the answer that I wanted to hear. Well, the first time I wasn't sure and felt a bit nervous about Thanksgiving, but now I think I finally understand where we're going. I hope you mean us, I replied. You, me, we. It's all connected. I just don't know how a long-distance relationship will work. The distance between Florida and New Jersey isn't too far, but it still feels like a lot. What if you find someone else? What if another charming girl comes along and takes you away from me? How charming is this girl you're thinking of? Short brown hair, tall, with a small mark on her right cheek. It's a beauty mark, not just a mark. Okay, I'll fix that then. A mark on her right cheek. She's good-looking. The sweetest lips I've ever kissed. Doesn't that remind you of her? Don't you know love can make you feel a bit foolish? She smiled. Now that we've talked about that, what was your other question? Thankfully, the rest of the vacation went much better. On New Year's Eve, I took everyone downtown to celebrate. I gave her a big kiss, and she told me it was time for me to leave her daughter for someone with more experience. I even gave Lucy a big kiss, and thanked her for taking care of me over the last few months. After Catherine left, things went back to normal, whatever that was. I made a list of things to do, and whenever Lucy wanted to change something, I made sure to do it. Just before our cruise in March, Esther caught a cold that seemed to stick around. I took her to all the doctors nearby and finally took a day off to go to Orlando to see a specialist, carrying Lucy in my arms. The doctor said Esther had bronchitis. With the right medicine and a nebulizer, she began to feel better. I added an air purifier and a heater in her bedroom to help her breathe easier. I talked to Catherine about putting our cruise on hold, but Lucy and Esther didn't want to hear any of it. Just go and have a good time, they said. This cough isn't going to kill me. Besides, you both need some time alone. Every time she's here, you end up babysitting me. Go, have fun. I want to see Catherine kick off her shoes when you get back. You know she loves you, right? That evening, I shared a little secret with Esther. Lucy, why don't you take a day off? I'll take care of Esther and you can go out with your friends. She was excited and I made her a cup of hot tea instead of beer. I built a fire and sat in a chair next to her wheelchair. You know I love your daughter, right, Steve? She asked. How unaware do you think I am? I've known about you both since that first night. I even helped you two get together. Okay, it's clear I care about her, but maybe you don't know how much, I said. I pulled out a small box from my pocket and opened it. If your husband were here, I'd ask him for his daughter's hand in marriage, but since it's just us, you know what I want. It's a bit small, isn't it? I glanced at her. Does she have any idea I'm going to ask her? Probably not, but I won't get a better chance than being with her alone for 7 days. How everything will turn out, I don't know. The only thing I'm sure of is that I want to marry your daughter. Oh man, I wish I could be there when you ask her, she said excitedly. Don't worry, Mom. You'll probably hear all the details over and over again if I know your daughter. You called me Mom, she smiled. No, you'll be officially a mom soon, but you've already been one to me for a while, I said. She got emotional. Just don't get sentimental on me. I'm not going to. It's just that I was hoping I'd have you all to myself. See what happens when I bring in another woman? She steals my man. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. We talked until almost 10 o'clock. She was happy for me. Or should I say for all three of us? I hope she won't say no. Esther could hear the worry in my voice. If she does, she'd be missing out. And then I'd have you all to myself. But don't worry, she won't say no. You're a great catch for anyone. And if she needs time to think, I'll line up a bunch of charming single men for you. Then she'll see that if she waits too long, she could lose her chance. Esther was used to getting what she wanted. Chapter 4. A New Start Without Esther by 8 in the morning, Catherine was already at the house carrying her suitcases. I had been packing all night, or I should say stuffing everything I owned into one big suitcase. They say women pack too much. "Do you have everything in that suitcase?" I asked. "Everything except my Mustang," she replied with a smile. "But we'll get that later." I tried to lift the suitcase but decided to let the porters handle it. All I really needed was my passport, driver's license, some cash, and a credit card. I checked the travel agency's list one more time. The last thing I packed was my motion sickness pills. I didn't want to take any chances. We said our goodbyes. Esther hugged me tightly and whispered, "Good luck," in my ear. It was a 5-minute cab ride to the warehouse and about a 3-hour drive to the harbor, so we had plenty of time to chat. This would be my first real cruise, and I was so excited. I put all my valuables, including my ring, in a small backpack that I would keep with me until we got to our room. If I could help it, I wanted to avoid the long check-in process. But even express check-in took a while, and our bags didn't arrive until after a silly safety drill. I felt like I was on the Titanic as they explained what to do in case we had to leave the ship. We were headed to warm weather. How many icebergs could there be? I unpacked my things, hung up my clothes, and organized everything in the dresser. Catherine hung up 2 long dresses, and that was it. "I know where everything is in my suitcase, except for toiletries. Everything stays here," I said. She seemed like an expert at packing. We signed up for a few fun activities, but mostly wanted some time alone together. We wandered around the ship to learn where things were and then went back to our cabin. "Let's swim in the pool," she suggested. At 54, Catherine looked fantastic. If I didn't know better, I would have guessed she was in her 40s. A lot of guys, both young and older, kept looking at her. I almost didn't want to leave her alone. But when I went to the buffet to grab some fruit and drinks for us, I came back to find another guy sitting on my lounger, chatting with her. Even with his dark sunglasses on, I could tell what he was looking at. I was standing there with my hands full of food when they finally noticed me. "Honey, you're back. Steve, this is Don. Don, this is Steve. I'd shake your hand, but it looks like you already have it," he said with a smile. "Kate, maybe I'll see you again." He stood up to leave. I looked at Kate and said, "Let me help you." She got up and took both shot glasses. After that moment, I didn't leave her side. We had a late dinner, and after changing into something nicer, we walked around on the deck until 8 o'clock. There was a big crowd waiting to get into the dining room, but within 5 minutes, we found our table and sat down. I ordered drinks and a bottle of wine for dinner. 3 other couples were at our table. John and Tracy were in their early 50s. Linda and her new husband, Paul, were in their early 20s, and you could tell they were newlyweds. The last couple arrived late. Kevin was in his early 40s, and his wife April looked much younger at only 29. It seemed like he had married a much younger woman. We introduced ourselves and learned that we all came from different places around the United States. When Catherine mentioned it was her first cruise, everyone had something to say about what I should do. They all promised it would be unforgettable. Dinner felt long. After finishing her wine, Catherine suggested we take a walk around the deck, which is when things went wrong. All the outside doors had steps to keep the ocean water out. I opened one and tripped, falling flat on my face. Then the door slammed on my foot. The embarrassment I felt was incredible. Catherine was trying to open the door again when the steward rushed to help her. I felt so awkward as everyone helped me up. That's when I noticed some pain in my right leg. A quick visit to the nurse confirmed I had a slight ankle sprain. "Rest for a couple of days and you'll be fine," the doctor said. He told me to take 2 pills 3 times a day and keep my leg up. He handed me a small bottle of pills that looked like large aspirin. "Great, just great," I whispered as I watched him put a bandage on my ankle. It hurt to stand, but I could manage it. "I can't take you anywhere, can I?" Catherine laughed. "Looks like you're on bed rest." "Not a chance. This is my first cruise, and I'm going to enjoy every moment, even if it's tough." So that evening, we didn't walk the deck. but we did visit the clubs. We found a table near the dance floor, and I took an extra chair to rest my leg on. It was dark, and the music was really loud. All we could do was watch people dance. When Catherine was asked to dance by some guys, she always said, "Thanks, but no thanks." "Go ahead and dance, I'll be fine. It looks like I won't be able to join for a few days," I said, sticking out my bottom lip. "Are you sure about that? I know you love to dance and have fun. Don't worry about me. I'll just stay here in the corner." She blew me a kiss. "Maybe we should go back to our room and dance a little. We'll have plenty of time for that tonight. Right now, let's enjoy the party." For the next 2 hours, she danced with different guys. She didn't dance any slow songs with them, but did salsa with one of them. She really was a great dancer. We left the club late that night. "I haven't had this much fun in a long time," she said with a big smile. We went back to the cabin, changed into more comfortable clothes, and sat on the balcony, enjoying the night air while holding hands. I walked over to her, kissed her, and said it was a nice idea. With the balcony door open so we could hear the ocean, we shared a sweet moment and then fell asleep in each other's arms. We skipped breakfast in the dining room and went to the buffet on the Lido deck. In the morning, we arrived in Key West, and she was excited to shop downtown. It was busy, and after a while, my foot started to hurt. "Hey, I need to head back before it gets too painful." I could see she was a bit sad. "You go shopping and have fun. I'll meet you back at the ship," I said. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm sure," I replied, giving her a big kiss. "Just don't spend all your money on those expensive souvenirs." She smiled, and I walked slowly back to the ship. What took us half an hour took me almost an hour. By the time I reached the ship, I was sore all over and sweating. I put ice on my ankle, kept it raised, and took 3 pain pills while relaxing on the balcony. I could see the pier and people walking to the ship. It was already 4:30 when I spotted Catherine with 2 guys heading toward the ship. I recognized my friend Don, but I wasn't sure who the other guy was. I could just guess. It seemed like Don had seen Catherine around, and it looked like they were having a good time. She had about 4 bags full of clothes, and for the next hour she showed me everything she bought. When she pulled out a bright pink swimsuit, I raised my eyebrows. "This one is for a special tanning bed," she said. I looked confused. "Steve, it's a tanning bed for adults. I want to go home with no tan lines." She laughed. "And don't worry, you'll be there with me." An hour later, we were on the deck without our jackets. I put a lot of sunscreen on the spots that were pale from not being in the sun for a long time. I accidentally touched her a couple of times, but she just told me to wait when Dawn and another guy I had seen with her came upstairs. I felt a bit upset. She smiled and said, "You remember Dawn? And this is Paul. I met them both downtown today. How's your leg, Steve?" he asked, looking at me through his dark glasses. "Much better. It should be healed by tomorrow," I said, not telling the truth. They sat down next to Catherine and talked a lot, while I started to feel worried as more guys began to walk by and stare at her. I decided it was time to leave. "You'll get burned, and it will ruin the rest of the cruise if we don't go." "You're probably right. We'll see you at the club tonight." She stood up from the lounge chair and put her top on. I didn't say anything. Dinner was great, and of course we ate more than we should have. I only had 1 glass of wine, especially after she suggested we take a walk around the deck. I took 2 more pain pills, and even though I was hurting, I told her I was fine. I was still limping, but I pushed through it. The club was packed, and we could only find a small table in the back. I danced to 3 songs in a row, but after the last slow song, my ankle started to throb, telling me I needed to rest. I did my best to enjoy myself, but now it was time to sit down. Sweat was dripping down my face, and I told her I needed to take a break for a few minutes. Just then, Don walked over without his sunglasses. He looked to be around 40, and when he asked Catherine to dance, I told her to say yes. That was the last I saw of her for the next 2 hours. Well, I take that back. She spent most of the night on the dance floor with Don, Paul, and 2 other guys. She waved at me, but after a few slow songs and too many drinks, I wanted her back. I made my way to the dance floor where she was chatting with 2 guys. She had a drink in her hand that looked like it wasn't her first. "Honey, I think we should head back," I said, noticing the guy with his arm around her. He quickly pulled back his arm. "But it's still early and I haven't danced this much in a long time," she said with big eyes. "There's always tomorrow night." I held out my hand to her. "Well, guys, I guess I'll see you tomorrow," she told them, though they didn't look too happy around her. She had at least had one drink and swayed to the music all the way back to our room. Once inside the room, she cuddled up to me. "I want you so much I can't take it," she said, starting to pull her dress over her head. But she stumbled and ended up sitting down suddenly. That seemed to wake her up, and she covered her mouth before running to the bathroom. Dinner and everything she had drunk that night came back up. That's what it sounded like anyway. I went outside and sat on the balcony while she tried to feel better. 10 minutes later, a woman came out with tired eyes. "I think I drank too much tonight," she said. Everyone was buying drinks and I lost track. I wanted to say it was okay, but I kept quiet. Our romantic cruise was not going as I had hoped. Did we spend the night together? No way. She fell asleep after 5 minutes and started snoring. I could only wish for a better day tomorrow, but that didn't happen. I left her to sleep and went to the cafeteria for breakfast. There was just a man there with his wife. He asked how my leg was, and I said it was almost better. I told him I planned to take it easy today and hoped to be back to normal by tomorrow. We talked about Key West and how his wife had spent a lot of money shopping. I laughed and said she wasn't the only one. We finished our meal and I went back to my room but didn't find Catherine there. I spent the next hour and a half searching the ship for her. I checked the gym, the dining room, and finally the Lido deck. I looked everywhere. Finally, I found her on the deck with her new friend Dawn. I was very upset and showed it this time. "I've been looking for you for the last 2 hours. You could have at least left me a note about where you were going. I got up, and you were gone." "You didn't leave a note either," I replied, glad my dark glasses hid my eyes. I turned my attention to Dawn. "Well, I see you found your new friend easily enough on this big ship," I said with sarcasm. "What does that mean?" she asked. "Forget it," I said in frustration. "Maybe I should leave." Dawn stood up. "You don't need to leave. Steve's just being rude. Sit back down." "That's right, don't go," I said. "If you need me, I'll be around the ship." And I walked away. She said something as I left, but I didn't hear her. There was so much happening on the ship. Dance classes, auctions, gambling lessons, along with pool parties and games on the Lido deck. At the gym, I got on the stationary bike, hoping it wouldn't hurt my ankle too much. It was pretty boring staring at the water in front of the ship, so I decided to sneak into the dry sauna and then ended up in the hot tub with 4 other people. The warm water helped my leg feel much better, but I was still getting annoyed with Catherine. I returned to our room around 4 o'clock. She wasn't there and looked like she hadn't been back since early that morning. I changed my clothes and spent the next 2 hours at the art auction. You'd be surprised at the money people spend on what I thought was trash. I guess when you're on vacation, you sometimes relax a bit, but not me. I got back to our cabin just before 7 and found a storm waiting for me. "Where have you been? I searched all over the ship for you," she shouted at me. I remembered hearing similar words today. I almost told the captain that you must have jumped overboard. "What's kept you so busy?" I said. "After I left you, I went to the gym, had a snack, then spent a few hours at gambling classes and an art auction." "Why didn't you come back and spoil your fun?" "I wouldn't think of it." She could hear the anger in my voice. "You're acting like a real jerk. There's nothing I can do about your ankle. Let's just eat dinner now, okay?" We took showers separately and dressed in silence. I don't think we spoke more than 5 words to each other before dinner. Everyone else was chatting about our next stop and their plans. We had signed up to see the ruins, and I was really looking forward to it. Then Dawn came by our table and told Catherine he would love to show her the ruins. I was annoyed. He was flirting with her right in front of me. "No thanks, Dawn. My leg is fine now and I'll take her myself." I shot him a look that said to back off. We went to one of the 2 clubs that night. The guy she danced with before was at a big table, and against my better judgment, she persuaded me to sit with them. We each had a couple of drinks, and I danced with her for a lot of the songs. I was getting my drink when one of the guys asked Catherine to dance. "Why don't you dance with someone else?" I said. She didn't like that and said she would love to dance, giving me a cold look. That's how the night went on. An hour later, another guy asked her to dance, and I told him to back off using the same words. "Steve, what is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this?" As if she didn't know. My answer wouldn't change anything. I was losing my cool and held out my room key to him. "Here's my room key. You can have it too," I said loudly to the shocked group. Just remember to clean it when you're done. Have fun, everyone, because I'm done here. They all looked stunned. I was halfway to the exit when an upset Catherine caught up with me. What's your problem, Steve? You're acting like you're my father. No, not your father, but I was hoping you'd notice what's happening. Just go back to your games and leave me alone. This cruise wasn't such a good choice. Stay here and let me get my things so we can talk. About what? Remember when you said your other cruises were bad? He just kept flirting with every woman he saw. Now I think I understand how you felt. I continued to walk away, hearing her shout for me to wait. One woman had already broken my heart. I didn't want to go through that again. I sat at the bar outside the casino for 2 hours. After that, I went inside and lost a few $100s. It just wasn't my night. I then went up to the upper deck, holding a pair of drinks, and kept going. In all my years of drinking, I had never passed out. But that night, it happened. I woke up with a pounding headache. My mouth felt awful, and I tried not to open my eyes. I noticed someone had put a blanket over me. Slowly, I opened my eyes. I had no idea what time it was, but I knew I was alive. You can't feel this much pain if you're dead. I pulled myself up to sit and rubbed my eyes, finally looking at the clock. It was 7:30, and then I saw her. She was still asleep in the chair next to mine, wrapped in a blanket. I looked at her, remembered last night, and felt uneasy. I didn't remember much of the last few hours, but I clearly recalled our last talk. I couldn't wait to see how it would go this morning. I thought about my choices. Get another room, pack up and leave on today's flight, or just get through the last 4 days together. But the last option didn't sound good to me. Just then, she stirred, and I didn't have time to think about my choices anymore. Are you okay? Am I okay? I'm up and breathing, but I have a terrible hangover. I wasn't sure if you'd wait for me in our room. When you didn't return by midnight, I got 2 stewards to help me find you. I was worried because when we found you, it looked like you weren't breathing. They said you had passed out and brought me some blankets. Please don't do that again. Do you understand? Why? What do you mean, why? It's not a hard question. I care about you. Like you care for a pet or something? I think you're still drunk because you're missing the point. Catherine, what are we? We used to be close, and I thought we meant more to each other. But after 3 days on this cruise, I'm not so sure. I'm too old for games. I've told you how I feel before. If you don't feel the same, that's okay. Life's too short for me to wish for someone who doesn't feel the same way. I think it's best if we break up now. We can still be friends to avoid any tension like last night. Are you sure you only hurt your ankle that first day and not your head? I love you. How can you doubt that? I'm not the kind of girl who jumps into a relationship with the first person she meets, in case you didn't notice. I know. For the last few nights, you've been ignoring me because of your new friends. I really meant it when I said I understood how you felt when your husband was flirting with other women. You've caught the attention of a few guys over the last few days, just so you know. I've learned something about myself. I can be a selfish and jealous partner, Steve. I see those guys, and I wish you wouldn't treat me like I don't understand. I've seen you with them. She laughed and looked at me, but I didn't find it funny. I was getting angry again. Steve, they're all gay. They are dance teachers from different cities, and there are 10 other couples there with them. Yes, they are gay. Don put that group together, and he wasn't looking at me. He was probably looking at you. She laughed again. You can just picture how surprised they were at what you said last night. Look, I love you and want to be together. But how? I don't know how we'll figure things out. If you could stop being mad at me for a second, I know something we haven't done since we got on this boat, and I want to change that now. We walked past some ruins and spent the rest of the day in our cabin. I can tell you that a small shower can fit 2 people, but it made a mess of water everywhere. By the time we were getting ready for dinner, we had used up all the clean towels. That night, she wore a really eye-catching dress. Everyone in the dining room turned to look at her as she walked by. When she smiled and whispered that she wasn't wearing any underwear, I quickly checked to see if she was joking. She shifted a bit, and I felt my heart race. The food was great, and the conversation was fun until we got to dessert. That's when I got serious. She turned to talk to the woman next to her, and I placed a ring box on her empty plate, feeling nervous. When she turned back around, Catherine didn't see it, but everyone else at our table did. I tried to hide my excitement as the dessert came out. Finally, she looked down at her plate. I did my best not to watch as she opened the ring box and gasped in surprise. She hugged me, kissed me, and jumped into my lap. I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. She cried out, "Yes, yes, of course!" Everyone at our table and those around us started clapping and cheering. Someone ordered champagne, and we filled the room with celebration. She couldn't take her eyes off the ring. It was white gold with a sparkling stone and beautiful details on the sides. As we walked past the club, she asked me to wait for a moment. Then 6 loud and excited guys came rushing out, all talking at once, and started shaking my hand. They said I was lucky, and I couldn't help but agree. They each talked to me, and I said I was sorry for what I said the night before. By the time we left, we were all friends again. We chatted for a long time into the night about our relationship and life together. Since we were really going to make this work, we had many details to discuss. That morning, we skipped breakfast again, wearing shorts, t-shirts, and flip-flops. We went to the Lido deck to have breakfast. We sat inside, and even though we were in a quiet corner, several people came up to congratulate us on our engagement. "Why don't we just quit our jobs and live for love?" I suggested. "We could do that if we were younger, but it would be tough now," she replied. We both wanted to be close to the beach, but neither of us liked the condo option. We might not get everything we wanted, but all we really needed was a place with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a big terrace. She insisted we needed a pool with a fence to keep bugs away and a hot tub. "My mom won't be surprised. She has wanted this for us for a long time," I said. I laughed. "That's my mom. She usually gets what she wants." She smiled and squeezed my hand. I got what I wanted too, and we shared a kiss. We were still the center of attention at dinner. The captain and the dining room steward came over to congratulate us during dessert. They brought out a cake with our names on it. It was delicious, and everyone loved it. We shared the leftovers with a couple at another table, and they said they wanted to remarry if we could get another cake just as tasty. For the last 2 days, we spent all our time together. Catherine had a flight home the day after we returned, and I had to go back to work on Monday. I wasn't in any hurry to leave the ship. We got our bags, loaded them up, and within an hour, we were on our way. Our hands stayed together as we walked. I pulled up to my mom's house shortly after 1 o'clock, and it looked like they were expecting us because they were all sitting in the living room. "How's it going?" I said. "We broke up, Mom," I told her. "We realized we couldn't handle a long-distance relationship." "Maybe in a couple of years we'll think about it again," she said, then burst out laughing and ran to show my mom the ring. Lucy just smiled at us. We had a light lunch because after eating so much on the cruise, I knew I had to lose a few pounds. She told my mom about our trip, including my little outburst with her new friends. "Steve, I'm surprised you didn't call them out," Esther said with a laugh. "My husband would have understood. There's no way he would have let her treat you that way. Now the big question is, when should we plan the wedding?" We exchanged glances. "Mom, that's the million-dollar question. We still hadn't decided how and where we were going to live, let alone get married." "Well, I'm not getting any younger. Don't you think I might not make it until the wedding? I don't see what the fuss is about. It's not like we'll invite everyone in town. Steve has a few kids and friends, and your family is here too. I'm guessing about 50 people. No more than that. We could even have the wedding at our house if you want." That could work, I thought. A wedding this weekend, and then we could always go on our honeymoon. Just not a cruise. I didn't want anyone getting too close to my bride. We spent the night in bed talking about that Easter weekend. We told everyone at breakfast that we would both have Good Friday off and could get married on Saturday. Catherine told her mom about it. That way, everyone would be free and we could have our honeymoon in June. The date was set, and the plans began. Esther was thrilled. She, Catherine, and Lucy started planning the wedding. I let Catherine talk with her mom about the details. I told the kids, and they said they would definitely come. They planned to stay with their mom. And no, she wasn't invited for a month. All the plans were made. The food, cake, DJ, officiant, and even the bartender were sorted. We had our marriage license, and now we just had to wait for the date. I felt lucky to have her beside me every day during that time. Looking at each other on a video call was okay, but it wasn't the same as being together in person. 3 weekends later, I surprised her by showing up at her place when she got home from work. We spent the weekend enjoying each other's company, eating pizza and drinking soda. I counted down the days. Esther was back to her old self. full of energy and determination, making sure everyone knew her daughter was marrying a great guy. Sarah never came over to congratulate me. I figured out the reason easily. The closer we got to the wedding, the more tired Esther seemed. I worried she was overdoing it, but she said she hadn't felt this good in a long time. I asked Lucy, "What can I do to help? I don't want this wedding to stress her out. Steve, it's all planned now. Everyone just needs to show up." Everything is on autopilot, really, but she looks exhausted. I'm worried. Lucy assured me, "You and I will look amazing at 88, I already told you. The doctor is doing everything she can to help, and I don't even wake her up after her afternoon nap anymore. She needs more rest, but she's resisting me. She talks about how she'll get everything she needs after she's gone. I told Lucy I would have a talk with her tonight at dinner." "Mom, you look a little tired. Are you feeling okay? I can still keep up with you. And don't get me started about how I could easily outdrink you. Don't worry, I'm going to have a wedding, and don't stress." "I'm not going anywhere," she says, reassuring me that she is fine. I heard her, but I kept watching her closely. "What's that stuff next to the beer?" she yelled at me on Saturday night. "That tastes terrible." Do you even know what bad tastes like? Absolutely, and this stuff is no different. Now pour me some more and get me my beer. I did what she asked, but only gave her a little. She didn't seem pleased on the day of the wedding. It was lightly raining. I was dressed in a suit, and Catherine wore a beautiful almond-colored dress. Once we said, "I do," the celebration began. We took so many pictures that we could fill an entire album with memories. I made sure to grab some good photos of her mom with us, as well as a nice one of just the two of us to hang on the wall. My kids were excited for us and welcomed Catherine into the family. Lucy kept a close eye on Esther while I danced with her in her stroller. Esther had tears in her eyes as she said how happy she was for us, claiming she could now be at peace. We both told her she would probably outlive us. But looking at Lucy, I wasn't so sure. When I mentioned I was looking for an apartment, I thought she might faint. "What, are you going to come here, get my daughter pregnant and leave?" I said, "Catherine is a bit too old for that. And I think I've troubled you enough. Your family. Who am I going to have fun with? With Lucy? She can't keep up with me. You're staying here, and I don't want to hear another word about leaving." I called Catherine. "Steve, if she wants you to stay, why not just stay? At least for a little while. Plus, Lucy said your mom still doesn't look well, and I'm a bit worried. If you're around, I'll sleep easier knowing you can handle any emergencies. How are you holding up?" "Other than walking around feeling awkward? I'm fine," I said with a smile. "You had a good time that week on the cruise, I can't argue. I'm working with a realtor to find a small place by the beach. I've told her what area we're interested in, so she'll send you a picture if she finds something." "I miss you." I replied, "I miss you too, but it's not permanent. Plus, doesn't saying goodbye make you value time apart? Not for me." She laughed and told me to take a cold shower. Maybe we could make another video together. I reminded her about it. "You're a cheeky one," she said. "I gave you a little taste, and now you want more. Maybe this weekend if you behave." I couldn't wait for 2 weeks to pass after Lucy and I returned to Orlando for another visit with her doctors. She needs to rest more. If she doesn't, I might have to take her to the hospital. The doctor told us that her sugar levels were too high and she had lost 2 pounds since our last visit. She needs to stop drinking beer and eat better. It seemed the doctor didn't know Esther very well. A cup of warm green tea after dinner wasn't her favorite. She preferred something else. "Look, Mom, if we don't gain weight and get your sugar back to normal, the doctor will put you in the hospital. Do you want that? Forget them. I'm not going to live forever, but I don't want to eat plain food and drink boring drinks. Now get me a beer," she said. I brought her a little glass of Bud Light. Catherine came over to see 2 places the realtor suggested, but neither of them worked for us. We set some new goals and told her to look again, but Catherine said she didn't mind the townhouse. We had a good time and tried to pack the week into 2 days. She left with a smile, even though she was still struggling. The summer heat lessened, and so did Esther's health. I kept Catherine updated every day. Even Lucy was worried, though she tried not to show it. After some serious talks, Esther was admitted to the hospital for observation. She was still losing weight because she hardly had any appetite. When they put in a feeding tube, I thought she might lose it. It was around 9 o'clock on Thursday night. I was reading a car magazine next to her bed. I thought she was asleep when I felt her thin hand on my arm. "I told you I had plans for you, but you never believed me, did you?" she said in a weak voice, but with a sly smile. "You may not believe it, but I still know what's best for you. You are a lovely couple, and for the first time since I met you, I know you're happy." "I guess I can thank you for that." I said, "Now why don't you get some rest before a nurse gives you a sleeping pill? I'd rather you pour me a beer." We exchanged smiles. I leaned over and kissed her forehead. I told her I wasn't going anywhere and would be there when she woke up. She gently squeezed my hand and smiled weakly before closing her eyes. I didn't feel like calling that morning. I still had tears in my eyes. Lucy had spent the night in the hospital. I called a friend and asked him to take Lucy back home. She was completely worn out and still in shock after a long night. I told Lucy I would see her later. "Hi, kids," Catherine said, all bright and happy. "Were you thinking about me? I was definitely thinking about you last night. I think I used up 2 batteries just tonight. It should have been easier to say, 'Honey, your mom passed away last night.'" I heard the phone drop. There were loud sobs, followed by tears. Finally, I heard her ask how and when it happened. Her mom fell asleep and didn't wake up. She felt no pain. We talked, and when I told her to go to bed, she closed her eyes and just never opened them again. "Your ticket is ready for you at the southeast counter in the airport. The first flight leaves at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I'm really sorry, dear. I don't know what else to say. Please take a taxi to the airport. I don't want you to drive. I'll meet you there." After a few more minutes of chatting, she reminded me that she needed to start making plans. I called her every hour until she got on the plane. When she finally threw herself into my arms, all her makeup was already gone. Even though we expected it, it didn't make it easier. She cried on my shoulder, and I tried hard to be strong for her, but I felt like I was breaking inside. I gave her my handkerchief, and we drove quietly to the house. Esther had already planned her own funeral, knowing people would be shocked. The funeral home picked up the body by 9 the next morning. We were told Catherine could see her mom that morning, but we needed to call first. Lucy showed me what was in the big envelope Esther had given her. The coffin, the burial spot, and even the newspaper ad were all set. The only thing I didn't open was the thick envelope with Catherine's name on it. It said to read it alone. We ate some leftovers Lucy had in the fridge, but nobody felt like eating much. I had 2 glasses of wine, and Catherine sat with me, finishing the last of the leftovers. I repeated Esther's last words to Catherine many times, and each time she cried, telling me how much she would miss her. I tucked my wife into bed and sat by the fireplace, sipping my wine and watching the flames. The next few days were going to be busy, and then the truth of living without Esther would hit hard. I already missed her. Her strong personality and sharp jokes always made me laugh, or at least made me blush when we were out. Then I thought about Lucy. She didn't have a job or a place to stay. I needed to talk to Catherine about it. I didn't want her to end up on the street. She had lived with Esther for more than 10 years and loved her like a mother. The next time I blinked, the sun was already up, and Catherine was standing in front of me. "You sat up all night. You'll be so tired today. Are you okay?" I asked. "No, and I probably won't be for a while, but at least Mom is at peace. I guess I never thought about what it would be like without her. I thought she would always be there for me. Now I feel bad for not visiting her more often or being kinder." I lifted her head off my shoulder and held her face in my hands before giving her a gentle kiss. "She cared for you deeply. She loved you more than you might ever understand. Try not to dwell on what could have been. Just be thankful for the moments you shared with her." She touched her forehead to mine and told me she loved me. She said we would get through this together. I carried her back to bed. The gathering turned out to be much larger than anyone thought. It was crowded, and they had to keep the place open longer to let everyone come and pay their respects. People arrived in cars, buses, and limousines. Some came using walkers or wheelchairs. I recognized many folks from the night before in the square, and everyone said she would be missed. Several people congratulated me on my wedding and talked about how great a wife and daughter Catherine had become. Even though she didn't spend much time with her mother in Florida, many remembered what she looked like when she was younger, especially those close to Esther. There were tears everywhere during the service. After the main part, Catherine wanted to step away from the family for a few moments so we could say our goodbyes in private. Standing with Catherine and Lucy, we whispered to Esther about how much we would miss her. Catherine gently touched her face, kissed her, and placed a letter in her hands. The funeral director quietly closed the casket and took it to the waiting limousine. We drove to the cemetery in silence. Catherine didn't look as the casket was lowered into the ground, but she stayed strong for the rest of the service. After that, we drove Lucy home, spending time just the two of us. Catherine mentioned she hoped to return to the cemetery soon to say goodbye, but she felt she needed some time before that. Back in Temple Gardens, we tried to have dinner at one of the restaurants in the square, but after the 10th person came over to express their sympathy, we decided to leave. I took her to a small restaurant off the main road where we could finally enjoy a quiet dinner. After we ate, we drove until we found a quiet motel by the beach. We walked along the shore and sat on the sand, listening to the waves until just before midnight. I could sense a sadness in her that I wanted to ease, but I knew that only time could help. I let her rest while I found a little restaurant nearby to get breakfast. She hadn't eaten much lately, and I hoped she would have at least a little this morning. "Good morning, Mrs. Moore," I said with a gentle kiss on her nose. "I've been cooking for a while, so please try to eat something." I made coffee and bagels while she cooked some bacon. I was a bit hungry, and it seemed like she was too, which made me feel hopeful. "Steve, I want to visit my mom's grave after breakfast, if that's okay with you." "No problem. I think it would be nice to stop by the storage unit, get my Mustang, and take it for a spin afterward. Maybe I'll even let you drive it." "Steve, why don't you just take it out of the storage and keep it at home? It's silly to take it out every couple of months. A car like that should be driven. If it were mine, I would use it every day to go to work. Kids, it's a classic car, and I want to keep the miles low. Someday it could be worth a lot. That is, if it doesn't get too many miles on it." I think she wasn't really listening to me and said, "Whatever you say." When we got to the cemetery, we cried. It was still hard and it would take time to heal. I hugged her, told her I loved her, and that I'd do everything I could to help her feel better. "You really love me, don't you?" she asked. "It's not just because of your past. You love me for who I am. Remember my words, in sickness and in health until death do us part." I meant every word. I kissed her gently. She hugged me back and smiled. I finally felt at ease. "Did you know my mom really liked you?" she said, as we drove my Mustang back from the cemetery, while I watched the road carefully until we reached our driveway. We continued our talk in our bedroom. "Like I said, Mom really liked you," she said, changing into something more comfortable. "I know, and I loved her too." "No, I mean she really liked you. You must have left a strong impression." She said I was one of the most caring people she had ever met, besides my dad. That meant a lot. I thought back to our first meetings. I didn't do much other than share a drink or chat about random things. I remembered her saying that after I found out about my wife, she thought of setting us up. "When did all this happen?" I asked. "I think it was after you left your wife, but before I came here." "Really? She planned this all carefully?" "Yes, she knew I liked to swim at night and that you did too. I just didn't know you were doing it in the common area." "Disappointed?" she asked, squeezing my hand. "Not at all," I answered. "You told her you wanted to propose to me on the cruise. It was our little secret." It felt right to tell her since she was so important to me. "Well, I suppose that made it real for her," I said softly. "And did she tell you that if you said no, she would set me up with many lonely widows?" she added with a smile. "She knows." I told her, just like I'm telling you now, in your dreams, you belong to me, and I don't share. It feels really good to say that. I'm not sure what your mom has arranged for Lucy, but I want to help her out. I have some money saved up, and I'd like to create a little fund for Lucy. She was not just a caregiver for your mom, she genuinely cared for her. I hope I'm not overstepping here. My mom was right. You really are a good person, and that's what she admired about you. You care about others. You are willing to help someone you didn't even know until a year and a half ago. That says a lot about you. So, what do you think? Lucy won't get everything she wants, but she won't need to take care of anyone else unless she chooses to. I paused for a moment. My mom already took care of Lucy. She won't have to worry anymore. Mr. Moore, have I told you that I love you? Not often, but I'll keep telling you until you feel the same way. Now, there's something serious I want to mention. Before you say anything, I have a big idea that I want to run by you. I'm thinking about using part of my retirement savings from my house and my pension when I turn 62. I want to quit my job and move up north with you. I know that's a long way off, but if I do that, we can be closer and won't have to worry about how to be together. I'm sure I can find something to do up there that will keep me busy and make some money. In the meantime, we could look for a place to enjoy vacations at the beach. What do you think? You don't like the cold weather. I love you more than I dislike the cold. Plus, we'll have cozy nights together to keep warm. What do you say? I don't like the cold. You won't enjoy living up north. You're only doing this because of me. That way I can keep my job and you can leave yours. I can't stand the thought of you not being with me. It's a small thing to do for our happiness. Okay, how about this? I'll quit my job and move into my mom's house. That way we'll always be warm. I like your idea much better. I think things will be fine even if you don't work. I'm not sure how much your mom owes for the apartment, but it can't be that much. I kissed her and smiled. Let's celebrate. Not so fast. We still need to talk about something that most newly married couples worry about. I suggest we combine our money and share the costs to manage our budget. I do this for a job, so I know a good bit about it. That seemed simple enough. Can we laugh and have some fun now? Don't you have any questions? Don't you want to know how much I earn each month? Don't you feel that when I talk like this, it makes you feel less confident? I love and trust you completely. I know you will always support me. Just please don't get upset if I go over our budget. She looked at me and laughed. That was a lot easier than I thought it would be. We shared a special moment, and this time it was really intense. I counted 3 moments of joy, which was a new record for me. I was breathing heavily, and Catherine was blushing and waving her hand to cool herself down, while we both enjoyed the feeling afterward. Wow. If this is how you act when I take charge, I might have to do it more often. You don't have to handle everything. I want you by my side because my wife means the world to me. I really mean that. Are you sure about this? Yes, no question. Good. But it will take me a while to get rid of $22 million. She gave me a big smile. What did you say? 22. What? Millions. My mom left me a trust fund and there is a little over 22 in it. Well, then we can give Lucy more than I thought we could. Steve, she doesn't need our money. Mom left her $2 million and a new apartment. Steve, I figured out a long time ago what kind of man you are. I just didn't want to step on your pride without checking with you. So, you're applying? I'll apply too, and we can find a little beach house with a pool. After that day, life became much easier. Now, every night, I quietly thanked Esther and remembered the words she always said to me. Steve, I have plans for you. I guess she really did.